Chapter 974. Tang Zheng flew into the sky. This scene shocked Dizong of Goguryeo and Song Jiangwang. Dizong of Goguryeo subconsciously shouted, "Don't go!" However, Tang Zheng did not hear his voice. Song Jiangwang was slightly delighted. He thought to himself, this little guy must have been scared silly. He actually took the initiative to fly toward the black hole. Isn't he walking right into the trap? One had to know that the black hole was not only useful to the ghosts in the ghost world, but it was also very attractive to the souls of humans. Once one was sucked in, it would be very difficult to break free. The Netherworld King coldly glanced at Tang Zheng and sneered contemptuously. "Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish." With a thought, the suction force of the black hole created by the Yama's seal increased greatly. In an instant, a few muffled bangs were heard. The defenses above the Yama's cities in the ghost world collapsed. One by one, the residents of the ghost world quickly rose into the air and flew toward the black hole. The other kings of hell gritted their teeth and endured. Their faces were terrifyingly pale as they looked at the terrifying black hole in the sky. They had already discovered that the black hole had risen from the 18th level of hell. This meant that something must have happened in the 18th level of hell. Didn't Song Jiangwang go to the 18th level of hell to meet Dizong of Goguryeo? Could it be that something had happened? Hundreds of thoughts ran through their minds. Their hearts trembled as they became more and more anxious. This was because there were too many unknowns in the 18th level of hell. However, they soon discovered a strange figure. In the sky, a figure actually rose into the air. This did not look like the ghosts that were sucked into the black hole. This figure was calm and composed. Even though they were far away, the kings of hell could see it clearly. Who is this? This thought appeared in their minds at the same time. As they were too far away, they could not sense Tang Zheng's powerful life force. Otherwise, they would have discovered that he was a living person and not a ghost. Not only the kings of hell, but almost all the residents of the ghost world looked up at the sky. Tang Zheng was as dazzling as the sun. No matter where he was in the world of spirits and souls, his figure could be seen. He attracted everyone's attention. Tang Zheng was in a daze. His eyes were filled with the unfathomable black hole. He had personally experienced the feeling of his soul being sucked out. He was overwhelmed with shock. He understood that this black hole had a fatal effect on the soul. However, at this moment, he already had no choice, and he was utterly unable to escape. Moreover, fleeing would mean that the Netherworld King had his way, and the ghost realm would fall into the hands of the Netherworld King. This was only disadvantageous to him. You know how to attract souls. Do you think I can't?" Tang Zheng snorted coldly and pushed his hands forward. Whoosh! A black hole appeared out of thin air, growing bigger and bigger. At the critical moment, he used the sky-swallowing technique. Immediately, two black holes appeared in the sky. Although the black hole created by the King Yanluo's seal was larger, the black hole created by the sky-devouring technique wasn't any weaker. The ghosts in the sky seemed to have been immobilized. They were suspended between the two black holes. The two black holes had a great attraction force. The two forces of attraction fought against each other, and the ghosts actually maintained a kind of balance. They could neither advance nor retreat. "Ah!" Exclamations sounded in the world of spirits and souls. This scene was too bizarre. Even the kings of hell could not do this. The kings of hell were shocked. Where did this master come from? The other party was clearly not the Dizong of Goguryeo. But when did the world of spirits and souls have such a master? Why did they not know? Questions quickly occupied their minds. No matter how hard they racked their brains, they could not figure out the reason and details. They could only be spectators. However, they also benefited a lot. Because the attraction force suddenly decreased, their bodies relaxed, and they hurriedly looked for shelter. The few cities whose defenses had been destroyed quickly reactivated their defenses to protect the cities they lived in. The ghosts were terrified. The residents of the world of spirits and souls were so frightened that they kept quiet. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. However, everyone's common focus was still on Tang Zheng. Because the black holes created by his sky-swallowing technique were too impressive. Its power was beyond everyone's expectations. This included the 10 kings of hell, and even the Dizong of Goguryeo and the king of the underworld. The king of the underworld's expression changed drastically. His originally ferocious face became even more terrifying, and the flames in his eyes were dancing non-stop. He was the most familiar with his netherworld ghostly art. Of course, he was also the most confident. He thought that none of the residents of the world of spirits and souls could break his netherworld ghostly art. However, the scene in front of him severely damaged his confidence. He almost suspected that this was all a dream. Of course, this was not a dream. It was absolutely real. The king of the underworld was also very clear about this, so the shock in his heart was especially intense. What's with the black holes he created? Is it also the netherworld ghostly art? The king of the underworld muttered to himself. However, he immediately denied this point of view. This was because he knew the netherworld ghostly art too well. One of the key factors behind the success of this art was the King of Hell's seal. The King of Hell's seal was connected to the 18 levels of Hell. Therefore, using the King of Hell's seal as a medium, he used the King of Hell's seal to perform the netherworld ghostly art. When the ghosts were sucked into the black holes, the sinister and vicious Yin Qi in the King of Hell's seal would take effect. It would seep into the ghosts and transform them so that they would obey the King of the Underworld's orders. As for the ghosts being transported to the 18 levels of Hell, this was also because the King of Hell's seal was connected to the 18 levels of Hell. That was why it had such a miraculous effect. Obviously, Tang Zheng did not have the King of Hell's seal. Even though the King of the Underworld was far away, he could tell that the black holes created by Tang Zheng were worlds apart from the black holes created by him. However, there was no doubt that both black holes had great effects on the ghosts. The King of the Underworld had never seen this art before. Furthermore, he had looked down on Tang Zheng from the beginning. This human was too weak. He believed that he could kill him without even using a finger. However, at this moment, he realized how ridiculous his thoughts were. He was entangled by Dizong of Goguryeo and had no time to care about anything else. He could only watch as Tang Zheng confronted the black holes created by him in mid-air. Dizong of Goguryeo was extremely intelligent. He immediately realized the great significance of Tang Zheng's actions. He originally thought that Tang Zheng was doomed. He did not expect him to have a miraculous move that could dissolve the enormous demonic power of the netherworld ghostly art. He had a new understanding of the will of the heavenly axiom. This encounter was not only to save the human world, but also to save the world of spirits and souls. This was because even if Tang Zheng did not come to the 18 levels of Hell, the King of the Underworld would still break out of the water at this moment. If no one restrained him, the King of the Underworld's netherworld ghostly art would be unstoppable. Then, would the world of spirits and souls not fall? Therefore, the heavenly axiom's actions were aimed at saving the human world and the world of spirits and souls. Dizong of Goguryeo had not predicted this before. Seeing that the King of the Underworld was trying to end the battle quickly so that he could attack Tang Zheng, Dizong of Goguryeo would not let him succeed. He immediately launched an even more ferocious attack. A 7-colored light lit up under his body, completely covering the light of the golden lotus. In an instant, Dizong of Goguryeo's entire body was bathed in the 7-colored light. However, he did not appear frivolous. Instead, he appeared extremely solemn. Just one look was enough to make one's soul solemn. "The divine Prajna lotus!" the King of the Underworld exclaimed. After all, the King of the Underworld was once the King of Hell. He also knew a lot of information about Dizong of Goguryeo. The divine Prajna lotus was a supernatural power that Dizong of Goguryeo could only use when he cultivated his spells to the extreme. There were many different opinions about the power of the divine Prajna lotus, but without exception, it was extremely powerful. Legend had it that the divine Prajna lotus had a total of 90 to 80 petals to form a huge 7-colored lotus. When a cultivator sat within it, he would immediately become a Buddha. Could it be that Dizong of Goguryeo had become a Buddha? The King of the Underworld and King Song Jiangwang had the same thought in their minds at the same time. Their expressions changed drastically. The King of the Underworld's fearless and confident attitude was based on the fact that Dizong of Goguryeo had yet to become a Buddha. If he had really become a Buddha, then the King of the Underworld would not be his opponent at all. Hell has yet to be emptied. It's impossible for Dizong of Goguryeo to become a Buddha, King Song Jiangwang mumbled to himself in shock. The spells that Dizong of Goguryeo cultivated placed great importance on promises. If he made a heavy oath, he definitely could not go back on it. Otherwise, he would face countless dangers and obstacles on his path of cultivation. This was something that any cultivator would be willing to see happen. This was why King Song Jiangwang was so confident that Dizong of Goguryeo had yet to become a Buddha. Suddenly, the king of the underworld's gaze was firmly attracted by the petals of the Prajna lotus. He was slightly stunned, but soon after, he beamed with joy. He cried out in surprise. Haha, 36 petals. Dizong of Goguryeo, you haven't become a Buddha, nor have you cultivated the true Prajna lotus. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said without sadness or joy, 9981 petals, symbolizing 9981 hardships. Now that I have experienced 36 hardships on the path of cultivation, I naturally have 30 petals. This is not the real Prajna Saint Lotus like you said, it is real. It is just that you have entered a misunderstanding. Haha, I don't care about your 81 difficulties or 36 difficulties. As long as you haven't truly become a Buddha, you're not my opponent. The king of the underworld was wild with joy. He roared and swung the netherworld lightning over. Wherever the netherworld lightning passed, the ghosts would be sucked into the lightning. Gradually, the lightning became thicker and thicker, as if it was about to fill up the hole in the 18 layers of hell. The ghosts in the 18 layers of hell were all sucked into the netherworld lightning in an instant. The lightning flickered like black pythons, flicking their tongues and emitting a terrifying aura. King Song Jiangwang retreated step by step until he reached the wall. There was nowhere for him to go, while the Dizong of Goguryeo and the king of the underworld were ready to attack. They had reached a critical point. King Song Jiangwang's heart skipped a beat. If he did not leave now, when would he leave? Times had changed. He believed that the king of the underworld would not be able to take care of him at this moment. As a result, he was prepared to take a gamble. Moreover, if he did not leave, the terrifying netherworld lightning might affect him as well. He would die either way, so it was obviously better to take a gamble. He quickly activated his Yama's seal, and with a flash of light, a black door appeared in front of him. His figure flashed, and he dove into the black door, rolling and crawling as he disappeared. In the next second, he appeared in his own city. Chapter 975. Every citizen of the ghost realm saw the magnificent scene clearly. They looked up at the sky and stared at the scene as if they were in a daze. Their hearts almost stopped beating at this moment. Many kings of hell had the urge to rush to the 18th level of hell to find out, but due to the black hole in the sky, they had no choice but to stop. Because they had to stay to protect their own people. But the curiosity in the depths of their hearts was aroused to the extreme. Tang Zheng also saw this scene. Although he was extremely shocked, he still restrained his thoughts and focused on dealing with the black hole in front of him. The ghosts were restrained by the two forces and couldn't move. Their eyes widened as they looked at the black hole in front of them in fear. Suddenly, Tang Zheng found that the suction force of the black hole created by Yama's seal had weakened a little. This change made him overjoyed. Originally, the two sides were in a stalemate, and the two black holes could not do anything to each other. But at this moment, the other black hole weakened, which gave Tang Zheng an opportunity. Before he could figure out the reason, he roared, "Absorb!" He quickly activated his vital energy, and in an instant, the power of the sky-swallowing technique increased greatly. Whoosh whoosh. The surrounding air was completely sucked into the black hole, and those ghosts also flew toward the black hole. Seeing that they were about to be sucked into another black hole, the ghosts struggled and screamed, but it was no use. At this moment, the power of the sky-swallowing technique overshadowed that of Yama's seal. The suction force of Yama's seal was reduced to the minimum. Whoosh! The black hole created by Yama's seal flew toward Tang Zheng. The sky seemed to collapse, forming a strange vacuum state. The other ghosts were desperate and looked helplessly at the black hole in front of them. The 10 kings of hell had no way to resist at all. They could only watch this scene. They thought that their people could escape, but they were too naive. Song Jiangwang's face was pale. Tang Zheng's skill and means were beyond his expectations, especially this move, which made his heart feel like it was about to jump out of his throat. He actually dared to boast shamelessly that he wanted to capture Tang Zheng. He was simply overestimating himself. Looking at the approaching ghosts and black holes, Tang Zheng did not have as many complicated thoughts as the others. At this moment, the only thought in his mind was to win. Of course, he would not learn from the Netherworld King's vicious methods. Seeing that the ghost was about to disappear into the black hole, he immediately stopped using the sky-swallowing technique. In an instant, the suction force stopped, and all the ghosts fell to the ground. After regaining their freedom, All of the ghosts danced in excitement and used all of their skills to escape as far as they could. Tang Zheng did not care about these ghosts at all. He flew toward the black hole. He guessed that the sudden decrease in the suction force of the black hole must have had something to do with the loud bang just now. Perhaps Dizong of Goguryeo had used some powerful attack to cause the Lord of the Underworld to lose control of the black hole. Therefore, he wanted to seize this rare opportunity to completely destroy this black hole and cut off the Nether King's path of retreat. Just as he approached the black hole, the suction force suddenly increased. In a moment of carelessness, he was immediately enveloped by a powerful suction force. Before he could react, his figure disappeared into the black hole. Ah! Cries of surprise echoed in the world of spirits and souls. Obviously, no one had expected this. They originally thought that Tang Zheng was going to win, but they did not expect that he would be sucked into the black hole as well. Song Jiangwang had mixed feelings. Without the suppression of this living person, wouldn't the nether ghost arts be invincible in this world? Then, even if he bitterly held on and resisted the suction force, there would be a time when he would be exhausted. However, on the other hand, Tang Zheng represented the human forces. Without him, the world of spirits and souls might be able to avoid the danger of being downgraded to a small world. All the residents of the world of spirits and souls trembled in fear and hid in their houses. Without this brave warrior to resist the black hole, would it not be difficult for them to escape the fate of being sucked into the black hole? Their faces were ashen, as if their souls were about to scatter. The 18 levels of hell were in a mess. The 18 levels of hell had completely collapsed, and the area had increased by dozens of times, turning into a huge ruin. This was the result of the battle between Dizong of Goguryeo and the Lord of the Underworld. Even the ghostly labyrinth at the periphery had disappeared, and the 18 levels of hell had completely merged with the 9th level of hell outside. Waves of ruthless Yin Qi drifted out, and the 9th level of hell spread out rapidly. The Yin Qi soared into the sky, and everywhere it passed, there was an aura of death. Even the sky above their heads became darker and darker. Dizong of Goguryeo and the Lord of the Underworld floated in mid-air, and there were traces of battle on their bodies. The 9th level of hell lightning had disappeared, and so did the Prajna Lotus. Only the two of them were left. However, Dizong of Goguryeo stood up and simply floated in the air, confronting the Lord of the Underworld. However, at this moment, both of them looked at the sky at the same time and saw the scene of Tang Zheng being sucked into the black hole. Dizong of Goguryeo's expression changed abruptly. He was very clear about the power of the King of Hell's seal. Moreover, this was the King of Hell's seal that had been imbued with the Netherworld's demonic arts. Its power was even more incomparable. This person had been sucked into the King of Hell, and he was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. He had completely fallen into the Lord of the Underworld's control. Wouldn't the heavenly axiom's decree be unable to be carried out? No. He definitely couldn't let him die like this. Dizong of Goguryeo's expression became very resolute, and there was a strange look in his eyes for the first time. It was difficult for him to maintain his composure. He put his palms together and stared at the Lord of the Underworld without blinking. He was extremely fierce. The Lord of the Underworld laughed heartily. Haha, this brat is still no match for me. How can the Netherworld's demonic arts be so easily broken? I want to destroy his body and soul in the King of Hell's seal, and scatter his soul. I won't let you have your way. Dizong of Goguryeo shouted. He took a step forward and walked toward the Lord of the Underworld. Every time Dizong of Goguryeo's feet landed, ripples would undulate. At the same time, golden lotuses would appear and bloom under his feet. Lotuses with every step. This was another great divine ability. The Lord of the Underworld's expression changed slightly, and he said, Dizong of Goguryeo, who exactly is this person? Why do you want to save him even though you've mobilized so many people? Dizong of Goguryeo said coldly, the Vajra's glare. As soon as he finished speaking, golden halos appeared all over his body. He was like a golden man, like a Vajra. His angry eyes were wide open, causing those who looked at him to tremble in fear. The Vajra was an important divine ability among the divine arts that Dizong of Goguryeo cultivated. The Vajra's glare was a wake-up call. The Lord of the Underworld's expression darkened, and he snorted coldly. You're really determined to save that brat. I won't let you have your way. So what if the Vajra's glare is a glare? Azura descends, kill. The word kill contained boundless murderous intent. The aura of heaven and earth changed because of it. The yin qi in the hell of the 9 underworlds changed the way it spread. It gathered from all directions and completely condensed together. A bolt of 9 underworlds lightning flashed past, and a huge shadow appeared in the sky. The water in the pool kept boiling. It was like a water dragon rising into the sky and gathering in the huge shadow. In an instant, the shadow underwent an earth-shattering change. It gradually condensed into a physical body and rapidly shrunk to the size of a normal person. Azura descends. Slaughter the world. The Lord of the Underworld roared. Roar. The Azura also let out a roar. This sound spread far and wide, even further than the Lord of the Underworld's voice. The entire world of spirits and souls heard it, and it was shaken. Just this sound alone almost scared some timid ghosts out of their wits. They all shrank into a corner, their faces pale and trembling. Azura! Dizong of Goguryeo looked at this thing that suddenly appeared in shock. The Azura was a legendary existence in the world of spirits and souls. It was said that he condensed the most ruthless yin qi in the world of spirits and souls. Moreover, it depended on fate. After so many years of legends, no one had seen the real Azura. Moreover, if anyone subdued the Azura, their power in the world of spirits and souls would increase greatly. They would become an existence that was not inferior to the 10 kings of hell. Even the 10 kings of hell could not compare. The Lord of the Underworld had the ability to make the Azura descend. It was obvious how high his cultivation was. Dizong of Goguryeo was not afraid. Instead, he became more determined. Whether it was the Lord of the Underworld or the Azura, they must be eliminated. Otherwise, the world of spirits and souls would really be plunged into misery and suffering. This was because the Azura's combat power was too strong. It only listened to its master's orders. It was a complete killing machine. Azura's sword. The Lord of the Underworld roared again. The Azura's long hand reached forward and grabbed at the void. A bolt of 9 serenities lightning appeared out of thin air and quickly condensed into the shape of a sword. The Azura sword. It was refined from 9 serenities lightning. Its power was imaginable. Dizong of Goguryeo's eyes widened. His face was full of anger. He also roared, "Devil vanquishing staff." A golden light flashed in the air. A shining golden staff appeared in his hand. Lotuses bloomed under his feet. With the devil vanquishing staff in hand, he rushed toward the Azura. 9 serenities lightning danced in the Azura's eyes. With the Azura sword in hand, it roared and rose from the ground as if it was invincible. It descended from the sky and slashed toward Dizong of Goguryeo. When the sword landed, the world fell silent. Only this sword was left. Time and space seemed to have frozen. Other than this sword, there was nothing else in the world. What was a sword technique? This was a sword technique. It was extremely simple, but it was invincible. It was as if any obstacle would vanish under this sword. If an ordinary person faced this sword, they would have been killed by this aura before the sword landed. They would have been turned into ashes, and their souls would have been scattered. The water in the pool had dried up. Where the sword pointed, a crack appeared at the bottom of the pool. It grew bigger and bigger, like a natural ravine. Dizong of Goguryeo waved his devil vanquishing staff. Golden light filled the sky. A golden staff shadow hit the Azura sword hard. Wherever the golden light passed, the world was dyed golden. It was solemn and was completely different from the gloomy environment around it. Chapter 976. The demon vanquishing staff clashed with the Azura saber. The saber and the staff clashed. In an instant, the heavens and earth lost their color. These two weapons had undoubtedly become the center of attention. The shock wave was like an atomic bomb that could destroy the heavens and earth. Dust and gravel filled the sky and spread in all directions. Thick and high smoke and dust swept across the sky like a sandstorm, almost connecting the sky and the earth, covering the sun and the sky. It swept across the entire 9th Serenity Hell at a supersonic speed and quickly rolled toward the nearest city. Boom! 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 Everywhere it passed, the villages turned into ruins and were swept up into the sky. Without the protection of the Yama's seal, the people of the world of spirits and souls had long been sucked into the black hole and became a dead village. At this moment, even the last trace of the village's existence had been wiped clean. The smoke and dust was invincible. Everything in its path was turned into nothingness. It slowly approached the nearest city. The Chakravarti king floated in mid-air and held the Yama's seal tightly. Rays of light fell and covered the huge Chakravarti city. It was like a huge protective shield that protected his city and his people. The people in the city were still in shock. What they had seen and heard today was something that they had never expected in their lives. They saw the black smoke and dust approaching from the horizon. One by one, they tried to escape but found that the protective shield of the Yama's seal not only protected them but also restricted their movements. No matter how hard they tried, they could not break out. The Chakravarti king's face was extremely gloomy. He roared, "Stop! Don't be impatient. I'm here. What are you afraid of?" After hearing the reprimand of the city lord, the people gave up on escaping. However, they could not remain calm. They knelt down and kowtowed to the Chakravarti king, begging for his protection. The Chakravarti king continued to channel his powers as he gritted his teeth. He did not know what had caused this, but there was no doubt that something had happened in the 18 levels of hell that had caused this. He and his city had become the fish that had been caught in the crossfire. Not only was it for his people, but it was also for himself. He had to face it head-on and not run. If he ran away, his people would no longer exist. Then, as the king of hell, he would be all alone. What was the point of that? He took a deep breath and looked at the approaching smoke and dust. He secretly cheered himself on. Finally, the smoke and dust hit the protective shield. Boom! An earth-shattering boom rang out, and the protective shield began to tremble violently, emitting creaking sounds. The Chakravarti king's face turned pale in an instant. His arm that was holding onto the Yama's seal trembled uncontrollably as his veins bulged. He cried out sorrowfully in his heart. The ferocity of this attack was far beyond his expectations. Kacha! With a crisp sound, the light shield shattered into pieces. Smoke and dust swept across the towering city walls of Chakravarti city. The city walls collapsed and turned into ruins. Ah! Sharp screams sounded from within the city one after another. This smoke was fatal. Everywhere it passed, all creatures were turned into nothingness, their souls scattered. Groups of people from the ghost realm fled in all directions, trying to escape the pursuit. However, the speed of the smoke was much faster than them. It caught up to them in the blink of an eye, leaving them no place to hide. High up in the sky, the Chakravarti king could only watch helplessly as countless of his people died. This time, he was really going to be all alone. Seeing that the smoke and dust was right in front of him, he subconsciously swung the Yama's seal to counterattack. However, with a loud bang, the Yama's seal cracked. The Chakravarti king watched in disbelief as his magic treasure shattered into pieces. This was a heaven-grade magic treasure. How could it be so easily damaged? Just that blow alone had not only broken through the light shield, it had also caused irreversible damage to the Yama's seal. Once he channeled his inner power into the Yama's seal, it would die of old age. Although the Chakravarti king was heartbroken, his rationality prevailed when he saw the smoke and dust coming towards him. He could no longer care about his people. He transformed into a ray of light and fled into the distance like a stray dog. He flew tirelessly for a long time before he turned around to look behind him. He could no longer see Chakravarti city. It was completely shrouded in smoke and dust. Not a single person had escaped. Faced with the obstruction of this majestic city, the momentum of the smoke and dust gradually weakened. Finally, it dissipated as if it had never appeared. However, the razed Chakravarti city still showed traces of its existence. The Chakravarti king stopped and looked at his city from afar. He wanted to cry but no tears came out. Who did he offend? Why did he have to suffer such an unexpected calamity? Ah! He looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. His voice was mixed with a myriad of emotions and reverberated throughout the world. However, no one cared about his gains and losses. Everyone was attracted by the 18 levels of hell and the black hole in the sky. After the black hole sucked Tang Zheng away, it did not stop. Instead, it became even more unscrupulous and started to absorb the ghosts in the world. Some of the weaker kings of hell were struggling to hold on. They were on the verge of collapse and the protective shield seemed like it would break at any time. In the world of spirits and souls, the cities of the kings of hell were far apart. Although everyone saw the smoke and dust in the sky, no one saw that Chakravarti city had been destroyed by the smoke and dust. Naturally, they could not feel the terrifying power of the smoke and dust. 18 levels of hell. Looking from afar, everything in the surroundings had collapsed. After the smoke and dust dissipated, only 3 figures were still standing on the ruins. Dizong of Goguryeo, the lord of the underworld, and Azura were dozens of meters away from each other. They stood in a triangular formation and faced each other from afar. The golden glow of the demon-vanquishing staff had dimmed significantly, and the aura of the Azura saber had also weakened. The impact of the collision between the two parties was earth-shattering. This was something that even Dizong of Goguryeo did not expect. This was a battle between experts. Every single move could practically destroy the heavens and the earth. This battle also caused another effect, and that was the complete disappearance of the vengeful spirits and malicious spirits in the 9 Serenities Hell. They were completely wiped out. This effect was even more immediate than when Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had enlightened them. However, these spirits had their souls scattered, which was naturally more effective than when Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had enlightened them. Dizong of Goguryeo felt that it was a pity. He had a compassionate heart, but he could not control everything. The result today was a variable that was beyond his control. Vajra's glare, severe warning? Haha, that's all there is to it. Dizong of Goguryeo, you are a joke. Now that Azura and I are here, and we have the netherworld ghost arts, who in the world of spirits and souls can stop us? Is it you? Can you do it? The lord of the underworld laughed wildly and proudly. The anger on Dizong of Goguryeo's face gradually disappeared. It was replaced by grief. A pair of eyes full of pity looked in all directions. The 9th level of hell had been destroyed. It had truly become a land of death. Other than the 3 of them, there was not even a single spirit left. Dizong of Goguryeo let out a long sigh. He put his palms together and recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra loudly. Scriptures flew out from his mouth and danced around him at high speed. They were like butterflies flying through flowers. The lord of the underworld looked at this scene with disdain. He sneered and said, "You are about to die, and you are still trying to be mysterious. I want to see what other tricks you have." Dizong of Goguryeo finished reciting the entire Ksitigarbha Sutra. The scriptures no longer danced in the air. Instead, they landed on his body. His entire body was shining with golden light. All the scriptures intertwined and actually formed a kasaya. It was dazzling and looked dignified. He sat down cross-legged. A huge 7-colored prajna lotus bloomed under him and lifted him up. The prajna lotus bloomed slowly. One petal after another kept on blooming. When it reached the 36th petal, it did not stop. The petals continued to bloom rapidly as if there was no end to it. The lord of the underworld was suddenly stunned. His expression changed slightly. The prajna lotus that Dizong of Goguryeo transformed into clearly only had 36 petals. How did it suddenly become so many petals? How many petals were there? 40, 41, 42. It was still blooming. Could it be that he had to reach the peak state of the prajna lotus when he had 81 petals? No, how was this possible? How could he do all this in such a short time? It was absolutely impossible. If hell is not empty, I swear I will not become a Buddha. If hell is empty, I will become a Buddha immediately. These words were like pearls. They were recited by Dizong of Goguryeo and reverberated above the desolate ruins. The lord of the underworld's divine soul trembled. He had never heard these words before. This was because when Dizong of Goguryeo swore this heavy oath, he had already been infected by the Yin Qi of the 9 underworlds. He had sunk to the bottom of the 18 levels of hell. Now that he heard these words, he suddenly had a bad premonition. He stared at Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva without blinking. Suddenly, he saw Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva put on the golden kasaya and bathed in the sacred golden light. The vanquishing devil staff in his hand lit up with scriptures, and the prajna divine lotus kept blooming its petals until it stopped at the 56th petal. The power of the 56 petals prajna lotus was much stronger than when it only had 36 petals. Every petal of the prajna lotus symbolized a calamity that the practitioner would encounter in the process of cultivation. From 36 petals to 56 petals, Dizong of Goguryeo had experienced 20 calamities. These calamities were in the heart and not in the external form. Therefore, these 20 tribulations were what he had experienced during this short exchange of blows. Although the prajna lotus hadn't reached its peak state, it didn't affect Dizong of Goguryeo from becoming a Buddha. With his cultivation and temperament, he had already met the conditions to become a Buddha. However, because he swore a heavy oath and hell wasn't empty, he couldn't break through this barrier. Now, due to a freak combination of factors, the battle between Dizong of Goguryeo and Azura affected a wide area. Everything in Hell had disappeared, and Hell had collapsed. Hell had become empty, so his oath was broken. When Hell was empty, he would become a Buddha on the spot. Therefore all of this happened naturally. There was no need for Dizong of Goguryeo to make any preparations. He recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra and turned it into a Kasaya. When the Kasaya was attached to his body, he would become a Buddha on the spot. Buddha was the final form of his divine power, so he had almost reached the peak of his cultivation. However, he hadn't experienced enough calamities. The Prajna lotus only had 56 petals, so he hadn't truly reached the peak of Buddha. Chapter 977. Dizong of Goguryeo wore a Kasaya and looked solemn. He raised his eyes and looked at Shura and the Lord of the Underworld quietly. Shura did not have his own consciousness and was not afraid at all. However, the Lord of the Underworld was shocked. This was just a look, but it was completely different from before. The Lord of the Underworld quickly channeled his energy and roared, "Dizong of Goguryeo, so what if you've become a Buddha? Shura and I will kill you if we work together." Kill. The word kill emitted a strong murderous aura and soared into the sky. The Lord of the Underworld and Shura moved at the same time and attacked Dizong of Goguryeo. The Shura saber lit up again and swept over with an unparalleled murderous aura. Dizong of Goguryeo sat on the Prajna lotus and raised his arm gently. Whoosh! He waved the demon-vanquishing wand from top to bottom, and a golden light flashed past. The sky seemed to be covered by the golden light, and the Yin Chi retreated wherever the golden light passed. Bang! The demon-vanquishing wand hit the Shura saber. The Shura saber pressed down and hit Shura's shoulder directly. A stream of blood-like liquid flowed down from his shoulder. Roar! Shura let out a heart-wrenching roar and tried to break free from the Shura saber. However, he realized that the Shura saber was pressed down on his shoulder by the demon-vanquishing wand. He could not lift it at all. The Lord of the Underworld was shocked when he saw this, and his expression changed. The Dizong of Goguryeo, who had become a Buddha, was beyond his expectations. He was so strong. Kill! The Lord of the Underworld roared and waved his hand. Whoosh! The Yama seal in the sky flew down and returned to the Lord of the Underworld's hand. The black hole disappeared, and the people of the ghost realm felt relieved. Go! A voice came from the Lord of the Underworld's throat, and the Yama seal attacked Dizong of Goguryeo directly. From top to bottom, the force was extremely strong. Dizong of Goguryeo did not even look at it. He waved the demon-vanquishing wand casually. When the staff imprints collided, there was no strong shockwave. Everything was as calm as the surface of an ancient well without ripples. Everything was still. After a long time, bang! The Yama's seal flew back and collided with the Lord of the Underworld. The Lord of the Underworld's tall body immediately became bent. Like a kite with a broken string, he was carried away by this force and flew far away. The combat prowess of a first-stage Mahayana realm cultivator was truly shocking. He directly crushed the Shura and the Lord of the Underworld. The Lord of the Underworld would never have dreamed that after Hell was emptied, it would bring such a drastic change to the Dizong of Goguryeo. At this moment, the Lord of the Underworld was filled with regret. The King of the Underworld flew for a long distance before he finally came to a stop. He realized that his own Yama's seal had almost created a huge hole in his chest. Before he could heal his injuries, he saw Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva hitting Azura's shoulder tirelessly with his staff again and again. At first, the Azura could still take it head-on, but he didn't have the strength to fight back. In the end, the Shura's strong legs were finally unable to withstand the continuous attacks. Thump! He knelt on the ground, and the ground trembled. The Lord of the Underworld's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when the Shura knelt. The Lord of the Underworld's heart was filled with despair and desolation. At this point, he understood that his accumulation of power this time had failed. After Dizong of Goguryeo became a Buddha, he was no match for him at all. If he continued to delay, he would probably end up with his soul destroyed. He made a prompt decision and prepared to escape while Dizong of Goguryeo was dealing with the Shura. He looked at the Shura unwillingly and prepared to turn around and leave. Suddenly, the Yama's seal trembled violently. What was going on? Before the first wave subsided, another wave rose. He hurriedly entered the Yama's seal with his divine sense. In an instant, he was stunned as if he had seen the most unbelievable thing in the world. After Tang Zheng was sucked into the Yama's seal, his soul didn't dissipate. He discovered that he had entered an empty space. This space was similar to a sumeru pouch, but it was bigger. However, it still couldn't be compared to a storage Dharma treasure like the sumeru world. In this empty space, he couldn't find a way to escape, so he could only wander around. Suddenly, an earth-shattering power came from all directions, as if it wanted to crush his soul into pieces. He was shocked, but he didn't panic. He made a prompt decision and used the sky-swallowing technique. A black hole miraculously appeared in front of him. He was overjoyed that he could use the sky-swallowing technique smoothly in this space. This space contained an extremely tyrannical amount of yin qi. As soon as the black hole appeared, the yin qi poured in like a flood breaking through a dam. In an instant, the yin qi decreased rapidly, and even the space became unstable. The pressure on Tang Zheng was greatly reduced. He had no other choice. Seeing that this method was very effective, he continued to use the sky-swallowing technique to absorb the yin qi without stopping. As time passed, the king of the netherworld's attention was completely attracted by Dizong of Goguryeo. He didn't have time to care about what was happening in the Yama's seal. Finally, the balance of the yin qi in the Yama's seal was broken. The Yama's seal was the most powerful Dharma treasure of the kings of hell. The yin qi was the most important. When the balance of the yin qi was broken, the Yama's seal's power decreased sharply. The Yama's seal seemed to be in danger of shattering, so it started to tremble violently. The Netherworld King just so happened to see this scene. When his divine sense extended in and was prepared to investigate, he shockingly discovered that Tang Zheng was safe and sound. What made him even more terrified was that the Yama's seal was in imminent danger. "What did you do?" The king of the Netherworld's angry questioning voice rang out in the Yama's seal. Tang Zheng raised his head and looked around. He said casually, "You sucked me in and wanted to kill me. Of course I wanted to save my life. Why can you damage my Yama's seal?" The Yama's seal was the key to the Netherworld's ghostly art. Without the Yama's seal, his Netherworld's ghostly art was like a castle in the air. It looked good, but he couldn't use it at all. The Yama's seal's power had decreased a lot, so his Netherworld's ghostly art would be greatly affected. "Ha!" Tang Zheng laughed coldly. "So what if your Yama's seal is strong? I have the sky-swallowing technique to restrain you. You can continue to lock me up. I'm not in a hurry. However, your Yama's seal will definitely turn into scrap metal in the end." Tang Zheng gradually figured out from the king of the Netherworld's reaction that the sky-swallowing technique not only had a special restraining effect on ghosts, but also had a miraculous effect on the Yama's seal. This made him overjoyed. The second half of the sky-swallowing technique that he found in the Langya Pavilion was really a priceless treasure. If it wasn't for the powerful effect of the sky-swallowing technique, his trip to the ghost realm would have been doomed. The king of the Netherworld was angry and anxious. He hurriedly used his divine ability in an attempt to kill Tang Zheng and make his soul scatter. Endless yin qi attacked Tang Zheng. Once the yin qi invaded his body, his soul would definitely be destroyed. However, Tang Zheng was not afraid in the slightest. He only activated the swallowing heavens technique step by step, and that mighty yin qi was actually unable to get close to him at all. It was completely sucked in by the black hole in front of him. As a result, the more yin qi the king of the Netherworld mobilized, the greater the damage to the Yama's seal. This was completely unexpected to the king of the Netherworld. "Ah!" The king of the Netherworld let out a deafening roar. This was clearly bullying. Although Tang Zheng's cultivation was worlds apart from the king of the Netherworld's, he had the sky-swallowing technique, a unique divine ability that defied the natural order. He could dominate the world with one move, and it actually made the king of the Netherworld feel helpless. The king of the Netherworld was really going crazy. He watched helplessly as the quality of the Yama's seal fell from a sage artifact to a heaven-grade artifact. His heart was bleeding. "I won't let you have your way." The king of the Netherworld roared crazily. With a thought, Tang Zheng was expelled from the Yama's seal. With a flash of light, Tang Zheng found himself back in the ghost realm. He did not run away. Instead, he took advantage of the situation and pounced forward. Since the Yama's seal could not hurt him, he might as well strike while the iron was hot. He wanted to see if there could be further developments. Whoosh whoosh. The sky-swallowing technique still had a unique effect. The black hole was aimed at the Yama seal, and the ferocious suction force firmly enveloped the Yama seal. What are you doing now? The king of the netherworld widened his eyes in horror as he watched the Yama seal slowly approaching the black hole. No matter how he activated the Yama seal, it could not completely get rid of the suction force. How can this be? The king of the netherworld originally thought that everything would be fine once he released Tang Zheng. He did not expect the situation to become worse. The suction force of the black hole firmly locked onto the Yama seal, and he could not do anything. He could not help but think of the ghosts that were sucked away by his netherworld ghostly technique. Everything seemed to be predestined. This was karma. I don't believe that I can't suppress you with my skills. The king of the netherworld gave up on the Yama seal and attacked Tang Zheng directly. With a wave of his hand, a huge palm slammed toward Tang Zheng's head. Tang Zheng did not have time to look around. He could only watch as the king of the netherworld's palm slammed down. Moreover, he really did not have much ability to resist the king of the netherworld's attack. Stop! The Dizong of Goguryeo saw this from afar and shouted in shock. Whoosh! The demon-vanquishing staff turned into a golden light and flew over, hitting the huge palm hard. Bang! The king of the netherworld's palm broke and turned into wisps of Yin Qi. In the blink of an eye, they were sucked away by the black hole. No! The king of the netherworld roared in pain and staggered backward. He hugged his broken arm and bared his teeth, glaring at the Dizong of Goguryeo who was flying over. Dizong of Goguryeo, I'm going to kill you! The king of the netherworld roared like a madman. King of the netherworld, are you still so stubborn? The Dizong of Goguryeo sighed faintly and asked. Put away your bewitching words. Why would I, the king of the netherworld, listen to your bewitching words? The king of the netherworld was furious. Sigh, if that's the case, then go with the wind and return peace to the world of spirits and souls. The Dizong of Goguryeo said. It's not that easy to kill me. The king of the netherworld roared. While the two of them were facing each other, Tang Zheng activated the sky-swallowing technique. The suction force of the black hole increased greatly. With a flash of light, the Yama seal disappeared and was sucked into the black hole. No! The king of the netherworld screamed and quickly turned his head, but he realized that it was too late. Chapter 978. The black hole trembled violently, and a huge change was taking place. Tang Zheng realized something, and he hurriedly activated the sky-swallowing technique. Waves of strange energy reverberated around the black hole. What have you done? The Lord of the Underworld was furious. Give me back my Yama seal. Now that the Yama seal had disappeared, his underworld ghost technique had completely lost its effect. This drastic move had caused him to fall into a hopeless situation. How could he not be furious? He did not care about his injuries, nor did he care about the Dizong of Goguryeo, who was glaring at him from the side. His face was extremely ferocious, and his body flashed with a black light. In the next second, he appeared in front of Tang Zheng and grabbed Tang Zheng's body with all his might, wanting to cut him into pieces. It seemed that this was the only way he could vent the anger in his heart. Tang Zheng's mind was completely focused on the sky-swallowing technique. Moreover, the Lord of the Underworld was too fast, and he could not dodge at all. He could only watch as the Lord of the Underworld grabbed him. Give me back my Yama's seal. The Lord of the Underworld roared at the top of his lungs as he tore at Tang Zheng with all his might. The immense pain made Tang Zheng frown, and he instinctively grabbed the Lord of the Underworld. Boom! The black hole in mid-air let out a loud explosion, and the airflow in all directions flowed toward it. The suction force was more than a few times stronger than before, and the aura of heaven and earth changed. The sky-swallowing technique was automatically activated under Tang Zheng's body. Two more suction forces were generated from Tang Zheng's palms, and they firmly locked onto the Lord of the Underworld. The Lord of the Underworld's power flowed into Tang Zheng's palms like a flood. The Lord of the Underworld's cultivation was extremely terrifying, and he was equivalent to a 9th-stage soul formation cultivator. Therefore his power was simply too great. Although it happened in an instant, a lot of power flowed into Tang Zheng's body. This was the effect of the second stage of the sky-swallowing technique. Tang Zheng rarely used this ability because the power he absorbed was ultimately an external power. Although it could temporarily increase his cultivation, it was not a long-term solution. However, at that moment, in order to save his life, he couldn't care less. Since he could absorb the Netherworld King's power, he would not let go of this rare opportunity. Absorption. Tang Zheng's eyes were as bright as the stars as he frantically absorbed the King of the Underworld's power. At that moment, he was like a balloon, and the King of the Underworld's power was like hydrogen gas, filling Tang Zheng's 8 extraordinary meridians and internal organs with this power. However, he still didn't dare to stop for even a moment. In an instant, the Underworld King's cultivation actually dropped by 1 stage, becoming the 8th stage of the Divine Transformation Realm. This caused the King of the Netherworld to almost go crazy. Not only had his magic treasure been taken away, even the power that he had painstakingly cultivated had been sucked away. Was there any justice in this world? He really had a feeling of speechlessness and was asking the heavens, "Get out of my way!" The King of the Netherworld roared and surged all the power in his body. A majestic force directly shook off Tang Zheng's palms. If it was an ordinary cultivator, they would not be able to break free from Tang Zheng's sky-swallowing technique. However, the King of the Netherworld risked his life and finally shook off Tang Zheng with this attack. The King of the Netherworld hurriedly retreated, not even caring about the Yama's seal. Even in his dreams, he had never thought that this insignificant human would have such a divine ability. He had never heard of it before, and it made him tremble with fear. This did not mean that Tang Zheng was very powerful. The most important thing was that the King of the Netherworld took the initiative to grab onto Tang Zheng in a moment of desperation. Tang Zheng had been constantly using the sky-swallowing technique, so naturally, his power was sucked away. This was mainly because of the strange effect of the sky-swallowing technique. It was not that Tang Zheng's cultivation could really hurt the King of the Netherworld. The King of the Netherworld was not aware of this. He was gradually frightened by Tang Zheng's mystical methods until his heart trembled. When Dizong of Goguryeo saw this scene, he had mixed feelings and was very glad. The person chosen by the heavenly axiom was indeed not an ordinary person. His cultivation seemed to be weak, but he had unexpected divine abilities. Even the King of the Netherworld was at a disadvantage because of a moment of carelessness. However, Dizong of Goguryeo would not give the King of the Netherworld another chance to attack. In a flash, he stood in front of Tang Zheng to protect him. Without saying a word, he directly struck the King of the Netherworld with the devil-vanquishing staff. The King of the Netherworld raised his only arm to block, but with a bang, his only arm also exploded. The devil-vanquishing staff landed on his head. Golden light shone brightly and completely enveloped him. Roar! The King of the Netherworld kept roaring and struggling, but it was to no avail. The golden light became brighter and brighter, seeping into every part of his body. Squeak! Light smoke rose from the King of the Netherworld's body. The King of the Netherworld was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Suddenly, streaks of golden scriptures flew out from the devil-vanquishing staff and covered the King of the Netherworld's body. The golden light reached an extremely bright and dazzling point. Boom! With a loud explosion, the King of the Netherworld exploded and disappeared without a trace. The golden light disappeared, and everything returned to normal. The King of the Netherworld had been scheming and secretly accumulating for so many years. However, he failed at the last moment. He was still defeated by Dizong of Goguryeo. Because of this, the Dizong of Goguryeo became a Buddha earlier. Dizong of Goguryeo put his palms together and chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. His solemn voice reverberated in the surroundings, and everything returned to normal. However, a furious roar broke the silence. The Asura actually stood up again. Without the King of the Netherworld's control, the Asura was on the verge of going berserk. Any living being within his field of vision would become his target. Now he was a killing machine. Therefore, although Shura had suffered a lot at the hands of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, and both of his shoulders were almost broken, he still rushed over without fear of death, ruthlessly slashing the Shura saber at Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Dizong of Goguryeo looked at the Asura and said, "The King of the Netherworld is dead. Then you can go with him." He waved the devil-vanquishing staff. This time, it hit the Asura's head directly. Half of his head was almost flattened, but he still did not die. Instead, he kept roaring at the Dizong of Goguryeo and bared his teeth. The golden light firmly wrapped around the Asura, but the Asura did not stop struggling. After a while, the Asura did not explode like the King of the Netherworld and disappear into thin air. The Asura has an immortal body? Dizong of Goguryu's expression changed slightly. Only then did he realize how terrifying the Azura was. The Azura's combat power was definitely not as strong as the Dizong of Goguryo. However, the Dizong of Goguryo could not kill the Azura. This was equivalent to the Azura having an immortal body. This was something that the Dizong of Goguryo had never thought of. Even the legends of the Azura did not mention this point. The Azura was an existence that was more powerful than the legends. If he was not controlled and continued to kill, the world of spirits and souls would probably be wiped out by him in the end. Dizong of Goguryo's expression was solemn. His mind was full of thoughts. Suddenly, he muttered to himself, "If that's the case, then I'll keep you. However, your ferocious nature is hard to tame. I'll give you the Vajra Devil Vanquishing Staff." Dizong of Goguryo pointed at the Azura, and a golden halo flew out from his fingertip. The Azura kept struggling, but he was firmly locked in by the golden light of the Devil Vanquishing Staff. All his resistance was futile. The golden halo flew to the top of the Azura's head and steadily landed on the top of the Azura's head. The golden light shone and turned into a golden halo, fusing seamlessly with the top of the Azura's head. Dizong of Goguryo put away the Devil Vanquishing Staff. The Azura was freed and immediately counterattacked, fiercely attacking the Dizong of Goguryo. Dizong of Goguryo did not dodge at all. Instead, he looked at the Azura with interest. Seeing that the Azura saber was about to fall on the top of the Dizong of Goguryo's head, he was still as firm as a rock. His lips moved, and between his opening and closing, the Xitigaba Sutra flowed out of his mouth like a trickle of water. The Azura saber stopped on the top of the Dizong of Goguryo's head. Seeing that it was about to cut through the smooth top of the head, it strangely stopped and could not fall any further. The flames in the Azura's eyes calmed down bit by bit. The violent aura around his body decreased by a lot. He was like a statue, not moving at all. After finishing the Xitigaba Sutra, the Dizong of Goguryo stopped. The Azura was also completely silent. Dizong of Goguryo stared at the Azura and said, "The Diamond Devil Vanquishing Ring is extremely powerful. After accumulating it for a long time, it will definitely be able to eliminate the violent aura in your heart." The Diamond Devil Vanquishing Ring was a magic treasure. It had to be used in conjunction with the Xitigaba Sutra to display its true power. It was best for suppressing evil spirits. Since the Azura could not be killed, then Dizong of Goguryo would use the Diamond Devil Vanquishing Ring to suppress him. Every time he chanted the Xitigaba Sutra, the Diamond Devil Vanquishing Ring would display its power and suppress the violent aura in the Azura's heart, allowing him to return to calmness. However, there was a time limit to this. Once the time limit was over, the Azura would return to his original nature. However, Dizong of Goguryo believed in the power of the Xitigaba Sutra and the Diamond Devil Vanquishing Ring. He believed that dripping water could penetrate stone. After temporarily suppressing the Azura, Dizong of Goguryo turned to look at Tang Zheng. He discovered that the black hole in the air had disappeared at some point. Everything had returned to normal. A strange look appeared in Dizong of Goguryo's eyes. It was not because of the black hole that had disappeared, but because of Tang Zheng's cultivation. His cultivation had actually advanced by leaps and bounds. With Dizong of Goguryo's strength, it was not difficult for him to discern Tang Zheng's cultivation. Originally, he was only at the first rank of the Yuanying realm, but now he had advanced to the fourth rank of the Yuanying realm. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation had advanced by 3 ranks. This speed was simply terrifying. It was not inferior to Dizong of Goguryo's instant ascension. Dizong of Goguryo's heart skipped a beat. He immediately recalled the scene from before. Tang Zheng had used some unknown method to absorb the power of the Lord of the Underworld. Furthermore, he had been demoted to the 8th rank of the Divine Transformation Realm. Although he had only been demoted from the 9th rank of the Divine Transformation Realm to the 8th rank of the Divine Transformation Realm, the difference of 1 rank was already shocking enough. Therefore, it seemed reasonable that Tang Zheng had absorbed so much power and advanced by 3 ranks. In the end, this kind of shortcut is not very beneficial to cultivation. I still have to advise him to take it 1 step at a time. Steadily and surely, this is the correct path of cultivation. Dizong of Goguryo's fiery golden eyes were not fooled by the alluring appearance of the sky-swallowing technique. Instead, he was able to see the drawbacks of it at a glance. However, this is also his opportunity. Others would not be able to obtain this kind of opportunity even if they wanted to. It's just that it's better to use this method less often. Dizong of Goguryeo was not a stubborn person. He did not completely reject the sky-swallowing technique. Dizong of Goguryeo looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. He saw that Tang Zheng's eyes were tightly shut. It was obvious that he had yet to recover from his cultivation advancement. Dizong of Goguryeo did not disturb him. He only quietly watched as a spectator. Ha! Suddenly. Chapter 979. Dizong of Goguryeo's expression changed drastically because he saw a strange phenomenon on Tang Zheng's face. Black lines snaked up from his neck like little earthworms. They crawled all the way to his cheeks and to the top of his head, making his face look somewhat sinister. This is the ruthless aura of the Lord of the Underworld's power. Dizong of Goguryeo's fiery golden eyes immediately recognized it. Tang Zheng absorbed the Lord of the Underworld's power. Not only did he absorb the essence, but he also absorbed the dregs. The Lord of the Underworld lost his nature because he was infected by the ruthless aura of the Yin Qi in the 18 levels of hell. This ruthless aura was transmitted to Tang Zheng, so he might also lose his nature. Dizong of Goguryeo was shocked. If Tang Zheng lost his nature, wouldn't the heavenly Tao's decree be useless? Of course, he couldn't sit by and do nothing. He shouted loudly, and when the Buddhist voice entered his ears, it was as if he was enlightened. Tang Zheng's body shook, and he opened his eyes. His eyes flickered with a black aura. Obviously, he was already affected. Tang Zheng, listen to me carefully. You absorbed the Lord of the Underworld's power, and you also took the dregs. If you don't control them, you will lose your nature and become a person like the Lord of the Underworld, who willfully kills the innocent. I will now teach you the Ksitagarbha Sutra. The Ksitagarbha Sutra can suppress this ruthless aura, Dizong of Goguryeo said in a deep voice. The Ksitagarbha Sutra. Tang Zheng was shocked. His current situation was indeed not good. His power had risen by 3 levels, but the side effects that came with it were torturous. He realized that he had been too naive. The Lord of the Underworld's power was not that easy to absorb. Just as he was at a loss, Dizong of Goguryeo's actions were really timely, and it greatly improved his impression of him. Dizong of Goguryeo was not only benevolent, but also generous to help him. He remembered this friendship in his heart. He did not stand on ceremony and immediately nodded to express his thanks. Dizong of Goguryeo immediately imparted the Ksitagarbha Sutra to him. He recited a sutra that turned into huge golden Sanskrit characters that flew above Tang Zheng's head. With a flash of golden light, they entered his brain and were deeply imprinted in his mind. Tang Zheng suddenly found that there was an ancient scripture in his mind. Although every word of the scripture was in Sanskrit, he could understand the profound great Tao in it without any difficulty. Subconsciously, he began to chant. Although no golden Sanskrit words flew out of his mouth, the black aura in his eyes gradually dissipated, and his eyes returned to normal. The Ksitagarbha Sutra can help you subdue demons and devils. You need to recite it every day, and you will definitely have a deeper understanding of it, Dizong of Goguryeo advised. Tang Zheng had seen the power of the Ksitagarbha Sutra, and knew that this was an extremely powerful technique. He sincerely bowed to Dizong of Goguryeo to express his gratitude. Dizong of Goguryeo slightly nodded and said with gratification, "Your comprehension is excellent. I believe that the Ksitagarbha Sutra will be of great use in your hands." After a pause, Dizong of Goguryeo suddenly asked, "What was that technique you used before? It could actually resist the Netherworld King's Netherworld Ghost technique?" Tang Zheng answered truthfully, "This technique is called the Sky-Swallowing Technique. I obtained it by accident. Just now, I absorbed the Yama Seal, and the Yama Seal merged with the Sky-Swallowing Technique, greatly increasing the power of the Sky-Swallowing Technique." This was a situation that Tang Zheng did not expect. After the Yama Seal was sucked into the black hole, it did not disappear without a trace like other things. It actually merged with the black hole. This made Tang Zheng very surprised. It was precisely because of this that his sky-swallowing technique actually leaped, crossing the soul-devouring stage and entering the mountain-moving realm. The so-called mountain-moving realm meant that the sky-swallowing technique was enough to move a large mountain. The attraction of the sky-swallowing technique had increased by many times. However, this power was too great. He had no way to test it and really move a large mountain. Dizong of Goguryeo nodded and said, "This is your opportunity. The Yama seal is the keepsake of the great Yama kings. It is also very important to the ghost realm. Your sky-swallowing technique merged with the Yama's seal. Perhaps there will be unexpected changes in the future." Unexpected changes? Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide. Even though Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's understanding of the swallowing the heavens technique was limited, he had fiery eyes of truth. Tang Zhenghao did not doubt his judgment, so when he heard these words, his curiosity was piqued. As for what changes it will be, you will have to slowly experience it yourself in the future. However, I still have a question that has been lingering in my heart. If I don't ask, I will not be able to let it go. Dizong of Goguryeo said again. What doubt? You are clearly a living person. How can you appear in the ghost realm safe and sound and not be affected by the Yin Qi? The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was probably not the only one who had this question. Song Jiangwang and even the Netherworld King, who had vanished into thin air, also had this question because this was too illogical. Because I have the 9-yang saint body. I am not affected by the Yin Qi. Tang Zheng still did not hide it. He had a natural trust in Dizong of Goguryeo. He felt that the other party would not harm him. This kind of trust was mysterious and he could not explain it in a short period of time. 9-yang saint body? Dizong of Goguryeo softly muttered these 4 words. I once inadvertently heard of this body. It seems to be a very rare body in the human world. I never thought that I would be able to see it with my own eyes. It is fortunate. After all, the ghost realm and the human world were separated by yin and yang. The human world did not know much about the ghost realm and the ghost realm knew very little about the human world. Very few people in the human world had heard of the 9-yang saint body. Dizong of Goguryeo had actually heard of this body. This was enough to show that he was very knowledgeable. Perhaps this is the reason why the heavens chose you. You are a 1-in-a-million candidate. Other than you, no one else can come to the ghost realm. It is even more impossible for them to do such an earth-shattering feat, Dizong of Goguryeo sincerely praised. Hearing this, Tang Zheng could not help but blush with shame. He quickly said that he was ashamed. Don't be modest. If it was not for you, perhaps the situation would be completely different. In short, the ghost realm owes you a favor. Dizong of Goguryeo solemnly said. Tang Zheng's heart moved. Since the Dizong of Goguryeo owed him a favor, then could he discuss this mission with him? However, this mission was to protect the Tree of Life. Absorbing the ghost realm's source of energy was a matter that harmed the ghost realm. He did not know how the Dizong of Goguryeo would react. However, when he recalled what he had said about karma, Tang Zheng felt a bit more confident. If it was really according to his karma, then wouldn't it be the ghost realm that took it from the human world? Returning it now was a matter of course. Dizong of Goguryeo faintly glanced at him. Seeing that he did not speak, he guessed his thoughts and said, I already have a general understanding of the purpose of your trip. You have done a favor for the ghost realm, so I will make the decision for you. Tang Zheng was ecstatic. He did not expect the Dizong of Goguryeo to be so broad-minded. But suddenly, the Dizong of Goguryeo changed the topic. You also need to understand that the ghost realm and the human world are 2 interdependent worlds. The annihilation and disappearance of one is a fatal blow to the other. So, although the human world can be upgraded to a big world, it can't be drained and let the ghost realm cut off its vitality. Previously, Tang Zheng listened to the Dizong of Goguryeo's explanation and was enlightened. He understood the importance of the 2 worlds to each other. If the ghost realm disappeared completely, then the ghosts of human beings would have no place to go after death. They would become wandering ghosts in the human world, and there would be no new human reincarnation. In time, human beings would also perish. In the end, the human world could not escape the danger of extinction. Tang Zheng was not a ruthless person. After understanding the stakes, of course, he would not stubbornly want to absorb the source energy of the ghost realm. He nodded in understanding and solemnly promised, Dizong of Goguryeo, please rest assured. I am not an unreasonable person. As long as the human world is restored to a big world, then everything in the past will be forgotten. In fact, after witnessing the strength of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, he gradually understood the strength of the world of spirits and souls. If he persisted in his foolish ways and the 2 worlds fought each other, it was hard to say who would emerge victorious in the end. Since the Dizong of Goguryeo was willing to uphold justice, this was the most favorable situation for him. The Dizong of Goguryeo nodded with relief. I passed on the Xittagarbha Sutra to you. Perhaps, this is the true purpose of the will of the heavenly Tao. I have a premonition that you will go very far. Thank you for the compliment. For this sentence, Tang Zheng did not feel much. Who knew what would happen in the future? The key was to do everything in front of him well. Roar. Suddenly, a roar interrupted the conversation between the two. The Shura woke up again and was extremely violent. The Dizong of Goguryeo was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he said to Tang Zheng, I put the Vajra demon subduing ring on the Shura. You can recite the Xittagarbha Sutra without any distractions. See what effect it has? Tang Zheng was quiet in his own world and did not see the scene where the Dizong of Goguryeo dealt with the Shura. Seeing the Shura was so violent and directly rushing towards him, he quickly restrained the panic in his heart. According to the Dizong of Goguryeo's words, he calmed himself down and recited the Xittagarbha Sutra without any distractions. There were still no golden Sanskrit words flying out of his mouth, but a clear voice floated out and flew to the Shura's side. The Shura's movements suddenly froze, but he did not stop immediately. He only slowed down his pace. The Shura blade fell from the sky and slashed towards Tang Zheng's head. Tang Zheng saw the blade, but he still did not dodge. Since the Dizong of Goguryeo asked him to focus, then he could not be distracted and continue to recite the Xittagarbha Sutra. The Shura's movements became slower and slower, but the Shura blade hanging above his head was still very scary. If it was someone else, they would have been scared and hurriedly dodged. However, Tang Zheng was as steady as a rock. This made the Dizong of Goguryeo secretly nod in his heart, secretly praising Tang Zheng's courage. He actually believed his words without any doubt. At that time, the Dizong of Goguryeo was even more fond of Tang Zheng, feeling that he was his fated person. If it were not for him, he was afraid that he would not have become a Buddha so quickly, and the crisis in the world of spirits and souls would not have been solved so smoothly. The Shura blade stopped, almost touching Tang Zheng's hair. Chapter 980. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He raised his head and stared at the Shura who had calmed down. He was surprised. The Xittagarbha Sutra actually had such a miraculous effect. Dizong of Goguryeo looked at him approvingly and explained, the Xittagarbha Sutra and the Vajra demon subduing ring complement each other. When their effects are superimposed, they can play a huge role in suppressing the Shura and calming him down. Tang Zheng secretly nodded and stared at the Shura who was close at hand. The Shura was no different from an ordinary person. However, instead of eyeballs, there were two balls of lightning in his eyes. They were as black as ink and kept jumping. Could it be that every time the Shura goes crazy in the future, I have to chant the Xittagarbha Sutra to suppress him? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Dizong of Goguryeo nodded. At present, the Shura's strength is very strong and the ruthlessness in his heart is too strong. Therefore, in a very short time, he will break through the imprisonment of the Xittagarbha Sutra and the Vajra demon subduing ring. We have to be on guard against him at all times. Once we discover that he shows signs of recovery, we have to chant the Xittagarbha Sutra to suppress him. Tang Zheng suddenly understood and sighed. This is really a troublesome matter. How is it troublesome to save the world? Dizong of Goguryeo said indifferently. Hearing this, Tang Zheng felt ashamed and gave a thumbs up. Admirable. Suddenly, Dizong of Goguryeo had an idea. Why don't I keep the Shura by your side and you can convert him at all times? This is also a good thing. What do you think? Keep the Shura by my side? Tang Zheng was shocked. This matter was really beyond his expectations. Compared to the Shura, the difference between his cultivation and the Shura was like heaven and earth. Wasn't this nonsense? Dizong of Goguryeo's expression was calm as he looked at Tang Zheng without blinking. He was actually serious. Dizong of Goguryeo's action had a deep meaning. This was because once Azura was by Tang Zheng's side, he would have to chant the Xittagarbha Sutra to Azura from time to suppress him. In time, Tang Zheng's understanding of the Xittagarbha Sutra would definitely be extraordinary. Dizong of Goguryeo had great confidence in the Xittagarbha Sutra that he had comprehended. He believed that once Tang Zheng recited the Xittagarbha Sutra every day and felt the profound dharma in it, then Tang Zheng would definitely be like him, becoming a compassionate person who would help others. This was the quality that Dizong of Goguryeo valued the most. Therefore, he had really put in a lot of effort for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng didn't know the reason, but he was shocked by Dizong of Goguryeo's suggestion. He asked blankly, Dizong of Goguryeo, the Shura's strength is too strong. If you keep him by my side, isn't it like keeping a tiger or wolf by a sheep's side? He was really too afraid of the Shura. This guy was a killing machine. If one day he couldn't suppress the Shura, then wouldn't he be in danger of being cut into pieces by the Shura? Dizong of Goguryeo laughed and explained, You don't have to worry. The Ksitagarbha Sutra has an undeniable effect on the Shura. Once you become more proficient in the Ksitagarbha Sutra, it will become easier to suppress him. You succeeded the first time, so it's impossible for you to fail in the future. You don't have to be afraid. Seeing Dizong of Goguryeo make such a solemn vow, Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is this really necessary? Dizong of Goguryeo nodded. I have too many things to do next, so it's impossible for me to take care of him all the time. If I'm careless, it'll be too bad for him to be seriously affected. Tang Zheng, do you think I have the time? Looking at the statue-like Shura in front of him, Tang Zheng couldn't refuse, so he simply made up his mind. Since you want to give him to me, if I keep refusing, wouldn't I become a joke? Okay, I promise you I'll keep him. However, to be on the safe side, I can't keep him alive by my side. I'll put him into Sumeru world. Tang Zheng compromised. Dizong of Goguryeo didn't care. As long as Tang Zheng kept him, then he had to suppress him. Naturally, he would need to recite the Ksitagarbha Sutra often. Over time, Tang Zheng's familiarity and recognition of the Ksitagarbha Sutra would be extraordinary. Dizong of Goguryeo revealed an unfathomable smile as if relieved of a heavy burden. Do as you wish as long as you keep him. Tang Zheng waved his hand, and a ball of light burst out from his wrist. The Shura disappeared and was put into Sumeru world. Good magic treasure. Dizong of Goguryeo praised sincerely. A magic treasure that could store the Shura was definitely not simple. It was definitely a heaven-grade magic treasure. Tang Zheng seemed to be an ordinary person, but in fact, he had many unexpected magical powers and magic treasures. Although you've taken the Shura, you have to remember my advice. If you don't suppress him in time, then he may break through your storage magic treasure. At that time, you won't be able to guard against it. Dizong of Goguryeo instructed. Understood. Please rest assured. Once the Shura makes the slightest move, I'll use the Ksitagarbha Sutra to suppress him. I won't let him harm the world. Tang Zheng patted his chest confidently. Dizong of Goguryeo nodded with gratification. His eyes looked into the distance and said, This battle is huge. I'm afraid that after the ghost world was affected, it's already in chaos. Let's go out first. Since Dizong of Goguryeo made the decision, then Tang Zheng didn't have to worry about the other kings of hell. He didn't have to worry about the lords of hell agreeing. Dizong of Goguryeo's steps were like lotuses. Every step he took seemed to be a step, but the distance was very far. His speed was extremely fast. Tang Zheng stepped on the War Soul sword and flew with the Imperial sword. He and Dizong of Goguryeo flew into the distance. Looking down from the sky, the 9 Serenities Hell seemed to have experienced a nuclear explosion. It was a mess. Dizong of Goguryeo suddenly sighed faintly. Although the 9 Serenities Hell no longer exists, the price we paid this time is quite high. Without destruction, there can be no construction. You don't have to care too much about it. Tang Zheng advised. All of this is the cycle of cause and effect. Dizong of Goguryeo shook his head. If the ghost world didn't absorb the origin energy of the human world, there wouldn't be the 18 levels of hell. The 9 Serenities Hell would still be a paradise suitable for cultivation. Naturally, there wouldn't be this scene now. Tang Zheng sighed inwardly. Perhaps the 10 kings of hell never dreamed that there would be such a day. This might really be the cycle of cause and effect. Hey, look over there. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's eyes widened in surprise as he pointed at the ruins below. Chakra City. Dizong of Goguryeo glanced and blurted out. Tang Zheng frowned. The last time he came to the ghost world, the first city he arrived at was Chakra City. It was from here that he arrived at Fengdu City through the teleportation array. Looking at the ruins now, he couldn't help but sigh. It's a sin, a sin. Dizong of Goguryeo put his palms together and lowered his head. He chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. One by one, the Sanskrit scriptures flew towards the ruins to expiate the souls of the dead. Wherever they passed, it became peaceful. Countless souls were sacrificed in Chakra City. All of this was indirectly related to Dizong of Goguryeo. One could imagine how heavy his heart was. Since Chakra City has been destroyed, let's go directly to Fengdu City. Dizong of Goguryeo finished expiating the souls of the dead. The ghost world is vast. If we fly like this, we don't know how long it will take to reach Fengdu City. Tang Zheng was worried. Dizong of Goguryeo smiled. Of course we will go to Fengdu City through the teleportation array. Teleportation array? Tang Zheng lowered his head and looked at the ruins below. He couldn't see the original appearance at all. The teleportation array was long gone. How could it be teleported to Fengdu City? The teleportation array has been destroyed. Most of the teleportation array has been destroyed, but it can be rearranged. Ksitigarbha waved his arm downwards, and the originally scattered ruins began to move. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere, revealing the huge square floor. The ruins in all directions were actually combined together by a strange force. After a while, Tang Zheng discovered that there was a square below. It was exactly the same as the teleportation array square he saw before. The ruins were gone. Realization dawned upon him, and he realized that he had been too foolish to have thought of this. However, when he saw this teleportation array, he became excited. If he knew this kind of teleportation array, he could easily come and go as he wished if he could set up a teleportation array between the mainland and the island in the future. Wouldn't that solve many of his problems? The family was happy and harmonious. This was definitely a good thing for his grandfather. At this point, he no longer cared about being reserved and asked directly, Dizong of Goguryeo, may I ask if you can teach me the method of setting up the teleportation array? Of course, this is not a difficult spell. With your talent, you can learn it in a short time. Dizong of Goguryeo explained the various methods of setting up the teleportation array to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng memorized each and every one of them and compared them to the teleportation array below. Soon he understood most of it. Let's go. Dizong of Goguryeo activated the teleportation array. With a flash of light, he disappeared. After they disappeared, the Chakravarti king flew over from afar. He was stunned and muttered to himself, Dizong of Goguryeo has left the 9 Serenities hell and reappeared in the world of spirits and souls. He subconsciously recalled Dizong of Goguryeo's demeanor and methods. To his despair, he realized that Dizong of Goguryeo's skills had improved by leaps and bounds. The world of spirits and souls will no longer have peace. Humph. I am now a loner. The other kings of hell must be waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Now that Dizong of Goguryeo has reappeared in the world of spirits and souls, let's see if they still have the time to laugh at me. He could not help but feel lucky. If it was not for Dizong of Goguryeo, he would have been the target of ridicule for a long time. The Chakravarti king thought about it and recalled the person beside Dizong of Goguryeo. Strange, this was a living person. He had seen a living person before, but that person had fallen into the river Styx and his soul had long dissipated. However, the Chakravarti king still remembered the magical equipment used by that person, especially that set of bow and arrows. The king of hell had only obtained 1 arrow and kept it like a treasure. No one could take a second look at it. The Chakravarti king wished that he could have such a magical equipment. That way, his combat power would definitely soar. Why would Dizong of Goguryeo be with a living person? There must be something fishy. The Chakravarti king's eyes turned solemn. He squinted his eyes like a sly old fox. They must have left in such a hurry. Something big must have happened. If I don't catch up with them, wouldn't it be a huge loss? Chapter 981. In Fengdu City, the teleportation array suddenly lit up. With a flash, 2 figures appeared out of thin air, Tang Zheng and Dizong of Goguryeo. 97 The two of them did not disguise themselves. When they appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding ghost messengers. They shouted, "Who are you?" Tang Zheng's life force was too strong. They were attracted by him at first glance. Dizong of Goguryeo's aura was even more unforgettable. In short, this combination was too eye-catching. They were immediately surrounded by a large number of ghost messengers. The two of them did not take their hostility seriously. Dizong of Goguryeo said casually, "Take me to see King Yama." "How dare you? Is King Yama someone you can meet just because you want to?" The ghost messengers shouted. They did not know Dizong of Goguryeo. Dizong of Goguryeo was not angry. He looked at Tang Zheng and said calmly, "Let's go there ourselves." "Okay." Tang Zheng nodded and agreed. He and Dizong of Goguryeo walked out. "Stop!" The ghost messengers shouted angrily. But to the two of them, these angry shouts were like the crying of a baby. They were not threatening at all. A majestic force quietly spread out from Dizong of Goguryeo. The ghost messengers retreated to both sides like the tide. They watched as the two of them walked past them and strode toward King Yama's hall. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. But it caused an uproar among the ghost messengers. The news of the intruders spread like wildfire. King Yama had just returned to his palace. Before he could sit down, he heard a subordinate report that there were intruders. He stood up in shock. This was too much. They actually dared to cause trouble in his territory. Did they not put him, the Lord of the Ghost Realm, in their eyes? However, he was also a little anxious. Who could the intruders be? Could it be guests from the Nine Serenities Hell? The Nine Serenities Hell erupted with such a huge battle. Who exactly was fighting whom? One question after another jumped around in the Yama King's heart, giving him a headache. All of a sudden, a commotion rang out from outside the palace. The Yama King's heart trembled. He understood that the intruders must have barged in. So many of his guards actually failed to stop them. Only after they barged into the palace did they cause such a huge commotion. From this, one could see how powerful these intruders were. He walked to the door and happened to meet two intruders. Instantly their eyes met. King Yenluo's eyes narrowed as he exclaimed, "Dizong of Goguryeo, why are you here?" Dizong of Goguryeo clasped his hands together. "King Yenluo, we meet again after so many years." How did you leave the Nine Serenities Hell? Didn't you make a heavy oath?" Dizong of Goguryeo asked in shock. "Until hell is empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. Now that hell is empty, I naturally came out." Hell is empty? How is that possible? King Yenluo was very clear about the situation in the Nine Serenities Hell. There were as many vengeful spirits as there were hairs on an ox. How could they be completely converted so quickly? King Yenluo didn't believe it at all. He coldly snorted, "Dizong of Goguryeo, you went back on your words and violated the oath you made." Seeing King Yenluo being so aggressive, Tang Zhang couldn't help but interject. "King Yenluo, on what basis are you accusing Dizong of Goguryeo of going back on his words?" "Let me tell you, he is telling the truth. In the ghost realm, except for Dizong of Goguryeo and the other kings of hell, no one dared to speak to King Yenluo like this." King Yenluo raised his thick eyebrows and flew into a rage. "Who are you? How dare you shout in front of me?" "Ha!" Suddenly, King Yenluo saw Tang Jing clearly and was shocked. "You are a human." How did another human come out of the ghost realm? He had truly become a frightened bird. Back then, that human had caused him to lose a lot of face and caused a storm. That was why he had such a big reaction to the appearance of a living person in the ghost realm. "King Yenluo, don't you remember me? We meet again." With Dizong of Goguryeo by his side, Tang Zhang directly revealed his identity. King Yenluo was stunned for a moment. He stared straight at Tang Zhang, then suddenly reacted and shouted, "It's you! It's actually you, you didn't die? How is this possible? You fell into the river Styx. How could you not die?" This time, King Yenluo was truly frightened, because this had completely overturned his worldview. Even if he fell into the river Styx himself, he wouldn't be able to survive. This living person was actually able to escape from death. He could no longer find the words to describe it. "You know each other?" Dizong of Goguryeo asked curiously. "Not long ago, I met King Yenluo once. I left one of my magic treasures with him. I believe King Yenluo should have kept it. Now, it should be returned to its rightful owner." Tang Zhang revealed his identity in order to retrieve the shooting sun arrow that he had lost. Once he retrieved this shooting sun arrow, he would have collected 9 shooting sun arrows, which could be considered as fulfilling one of his wishes. King Yenluo's heart tightened and said, "Nonsense, why would I want your thing? It must have been lost in some corner long ago." In fact, King Yenluo had already studied the shooting sun arrow and understood that it was a rare magic treasure. He had always kept it in his heart. How could he return it to its rightful owner? Seeing his intense reaction, Tang Zhang was instead certain that the shooting sun arrow must be in his hands, so he said, King Yenluo, as the head of the 10 kings of hell, your lying ability is not very good, far worse than King Songjiang. You have met King Songjiang? Yes, King Songjiang went to the 9 Serenities hell, so he must have met you. Is he plotting some scheme again? King Yenluo asked as if he was facing a great enemy. I don't know what King Songjiang is thinking. I only want my shooting sun arrow back. Humph, what if I don't give it to you? Since his thoughts were seen through, King Yenluo no longer denied it and instead arrogantly asked. Back then, he was able to force Tang Zhang to jump into the river Styx, so he was still confident that he could deal with him now. Moreover, he wouldn't let him escape so easily. Tang Zhang didn't say anything, but Dizong of Goguryeo had already taken the initiative. King Yenluo, you are the head of the 10 kings of hell. What is the meaning of bullying a junior? King Yenluo's heart trembled and said, Dizong of Goguryeo, could it be that you want to stand up for him? He is a human. So what if he is a human? All living beings are equal. Dizong of Goguryeo, this is Fengdu City, the Yama Palace. If you want to stand up for a human, aren't you looking down on my Fengdu City too much? King Yenluo suppressed his anger and berated. Dizong of Goguryeo was unmoved and said indifferently, what we want is not just a magic treasure. This time, we specially came to find you for the Tree of Life. Tree of Life? You actually want to become enemies with the entire ghost realm for a human? King Yenluo came to a realization and immediately flew into a rage. The cycle of karma. What you took from the human world back then, it is time to return today. Nonsense. There is no reason to return something that has fallen into my hands. Is that so? Since that is the case, then we can only take it ourselves. Dizong of Goguryeo was very clear that Tang Zhang was not a match for King Yenluo, so he took the initiative to attack. The subduing devil staff flashed and struck towards King Yenluo. King Yenluo roared and took out the Yama seal. With a bang, King Yenluo flew back and crashed into the wall of the main hall, leaving a dent in the wall. King Yenluo, don't be stubborn. Dizong of Goguryeo advised. King Yenluo's heart beat wildly. In these years, his strength had improved a lot, but he was not a match for the Dizong of Goguryeo. However, he was not prepared to admit defeat. With a roar, the Yama seal expanded and broke through the main hall. Like a mountain, it pressed towards the Dizong of Goguryeo. Dizong of Goguryeo shook his head. Stubborn, you are asking for humiliation. The subduing devil staff lightly waved upwards and blocked the Yama seal. The mountain-like Yama seal could no longer descend. No matter how King Yenluo urged his strength, the Yama seal did not move at all. Instead, it flashed and quickly shrunk. King Yenluo turned pale with fright. He wanted to take back the Yama seal, but he found that a large hand had already grasped the Yama seal firmly in the palm of his hand. The Yama seal fell into the hands of the Dizong of Goguryeo. King Yenluo's eyes were about to split open, but there was nothing he could do. He felt a deep sense of powerlessness. He glared at the Dizong of Goguryeo and Tang Zhang with resentment, gnashing his teeth. Dizong of Goguryeo, you are helping outsiders. This is making the entire ghost realm your enemy. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because your cultivation is high. Dizong of Goguryeo shook his head. I have never bullied others with strength. As for Tang Zhang's request, it is a reasonable request. Humans and the ghost realm rely on each other for survival. Why must we fight to the death? Since ancient times, the two worlds have been living in harmony. Ever since you guys absorbed the energy of the human world, the ghost realm has been in trouble. Even the 9 underworlds has been turned from a holy land of cultivation to hell. This is the punishment of the heavenly Tao. Don't you know? Humph. Don't talk about these nonsensical things. I will not be bewitched by you. King Yenluo stubbornly stretched his neck. Suddenly, his eyes lit up when he saw someone walking in from outside the palace. He was overjoyed and shouted, Kakravati King, you are here. Let's work together to take down the Dizong of Goguryeo. We will make sure that this traitor of the ghost realm has no place to stay. Kakravati King's expression was very ugly. He had seen the battle just now and knew that even if he joined forces, they might not be a match for the Dizong of Goguryeo. Moreover, if he did this, he would be paving the way for King Yenluo. There was no benefit for him. He had already become a loner. Even his city and people no longer existed. He could not help but feel disheartened. Seeing that Chakravarti King was indifferent, King Yenluo was furious. Chakravarti King, are you also going to collude with the Dizong of Goguryeo and betray the Ghost Realm? King Yenluo, you keep saying that you have betrayed the Ghost Realm. In fact, you are the sinner of the Ghost Realm. If you had not agreed to King Songjiang's idea to absorb the energy of the human world, this would not have happened. Put down the butcher's knife. Everything is over. Dizong of Goguryeo advised. Haha, put down the butcher's knife? Why should I put it down? Dizong of Goguryeo, even if I die, don't think that I will listen to you. King Yenluo laughed maniacally. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At this moment, a few figures suddenly flew in from outside the palace. They were the remaining 8 kings of hell. King Yenluo's eyes lit up as he was overjoyed. Dizong of Goguryeo, you should be the one listening to me now. You are already surrounded. Let's see how you are going to act arrogantly. Chapter 982. The 10 kings of hell blocked the entrance of the main hall, surrounding Dizong of Goguryeo and Tang Zheng. However, after hearing King Yenluo's words, the other kings of hell didn't react with righteous indignation. Instead, they looked at Dizong of Goguryeo and Tang Zheng apprehensively, their eyes filled with thought-provoking expressions. Especially Dizong of Goguryeo, who attracted most of the attention. It turned out that Song Jiangwang had already been caught by the other kings of hell outside and asked clearly. Regarding what happened in the 9 Serenities Hell, these kings of hell already had a rough understanding of it. They couldn't help but be deeply shocked by Dizong of Goguryeo's strength. At the same time, a deep sense of powerlessness was born, so naturally, they didn't dare to act rashly. Now that they saw King Yenluo unable to resist Dizong of Goguryeo, they were flustered and exasperated. How could they still listen to King Yenluo's instigation and become enemies with Dizong of Goguryeo? Seeing that everyone was indifferent, King Yenluo was stunned for a moment, then flew into a rage. What are you all doing? Dizong of Goguryeo betrayed the Ghost Realm and colluded with this human. The evidence is conclusive. We must get rid of him as soon as possible. Song Jiangwang stood out and said, King Yenluo, back then you instigated everyone to become enemies with Dizong of Goguryeo and trapped Dizong of Goguryeo in the 9 Serenities Hell. Now you're still bewitching people like this. Do you think everyone will still listen to your bewitchment? Song Jiangwang had already thought it through very clearly. Even if he joined forces with the 10 kings of hell, he might not be a match for Dizong of Goguryeo. Therefore, it was better not to stubbornly persist in going down the wrong path and become enemies with Dizong of Goguryeo. His current plan was to win the favor of Dizong of Goguryeo and take advantage of the fact that King Yenluo was still in the dark to ruthlessly suppress him and weaken his prestige. As for Dizong of Goguryeo's objective, Song Jiangwang was still unclear. However, he had already made up his mind to stand firmly on King Yenluo's side. Hearing Song Jiangwang's words, King Yama's eyes widened in disbelief. Although the two of them had fought openly and secretly in the past, Song Jiangwang still didn't dare to confront him so recklessly. Could it be that Song Jiangwang had also colluded with Dizong of Goguryeo? King Yama was shocked by this judgment. Song Jiangwang was already a huge threat to him. Now that he had a strong ally like King Yenluo, he was no longer a match for them. No wonder Song Jiangwang was so fearless. King Yama thought that he had instantly understood the cause and effect, and his expression was extremely ugly. Do you all listen to Song Jiangwang? Seeing that the other kings of hell didn't say a word, King Yama asked indignantly. A few kings of hell who were familiar with King Yama hesitated for a moment before advising, King Yama, don't be angry. This matter needs further consideration. How could Dizong of Goguryeo betray the Ghost Realm? Don't you think so? King Yama didn't buy this kind of behavior. Instead, he was furious. These guys usually flattered him, but at this critical moment, they actually dropped the ball. This was a blatant betrayal. As the head of the 10 kings of hell, King Yama usually kept his word. Other than Song Jiangwang, who occasionally challenged his dignity, no one else dared to. Now, these kings of hell actually obeyed him. How could he not be angry? You guys are doing this on purpose, right? Good, very good. This is Fengdu City's Yama Palace, my territory. I have the final say. You guys want to take advantage of your numbers to deal with me? You guys are too naive. King Yama had already lost his mind. Song Jiangwang's lips curled into a smug smile. King Yama's thoughts and shrewdness were not as deep as his. After being provoked and squeezed, he was finally about to explode. King Yama roared and launched an attack. However, he didn't attack Dizong of Goguryeo. Instead, he attacked Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was the root of all the problems. Moreover, he had let him escape last time, causing King Yama to lose face. Therefore, he wanted to take the opportunity to kill Tang Zheng. No one expected that he would sneak attack Tang Zheng as King Yama. Even the Dizong of Goguryeo and Tang Zheng didn't expect this. Seeing King Yama's attack in front of him, Tang Zheng finally reacted as if he had woken up from a dream. Looking at the opponent's attack that was sure to succeed, Tang Zheng understood that with his strength, if he fought against it, only death would await him. Most likely, even the Dizong of Goguryeo wouldn't be able to save him. However, he didn't sit still and wait for death. Instead, a meaningful smile appeared on his face. With a thought, a figure appeared in front of him, blocking King Yama's attack. Bang! King Yama struck his opponent. However, his opponent only staggered a few steps back. He didn't fall, nor did he suffer any serious injuries. Instead, as if enraged, he roared toward the sky. A large saber descended from the sky, fiercely slashing towards King Yama. This disruptor was naturally the Azura. Tang Zheng knew that he wouldn't be able to block King Yama's attack. Coincidentally, he sensed that the Azura in Sumeru World was about to break through the suppression. Thus, he directly released Sumeru World, blocking King Yama's attack. The Azura had an undying body. Although King Yama's attack was very fierce, it couldn't kill him. Instead, it completely enraged him. Hua! The Azura's saber was extremely ferocious. With a single slash, it severed one of King Yama's arms. Even King Yama himself didn't have time to react. This was because the Azura's attack was too fierce and sharp. The other kings of hell were also shocked by this scene. In the blink of an eye, King Yama had lost an arm. This was too inconceivable. Who was this guy? How could he have such powerful battle prowess? He was clearly summoned by that human. How could this human have such a mystical power? In fact, even Song Jiangwang's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. This was because when he left, the Netherworld King hadn't summoned the Azura yet. Thus, he didn't recognize the Azura. However, when he saw the Azura's attack just now, Song Jiangwang already knew how powerful it was. More importantly, where did Tang Zheng find such a powerful ally? During the previous battle, why didn't Tang Zheng summon such a powerful ally? One question after another circled in Song Jiangwang's mind, causing him to be at a loss. Dizong of Goguryeo initially wanted to stop him, but he stopped at the last moment. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng's ability to adapt to the situation was at the peak of perfection. If he hadn't summoned the Azura, then even if he resisted, he would definitely have suffered a great loss. However, now that he was unscathed, he resolved this crisis. This courage and adaptability made Dizong of Goguryeo praise him endlessly. Everyone was attracted by the battle between the Azura and King Yama. No one dared to interfere. In fact, they didn't even dare to breathe too heavily, afraid that they would miss the exciting part. King Yama sucked in a breath of cold air as he cursed angrily. What the hell is this? Azura! Tang Zheng said softly. However, these two words were like a clap of thunder that exploded among the kings of hell. Azuras were legendary existences. Who would have thought that they would be controlled by a mere human? The shock and horror in their hearts was unimaginable. Dizong of Goguryeo also guessed everyone's thoughts, but he didn't point out the origin of the Azura. Tang Zheng didn't care about what the others were thinking. He only paid attention to the Azura. After seeing that he didn't stop after cutting off King Yama's arm, he chased after him. The Azura blade directly slashed towards King Yama's head, as if he wanted to split him in half. King Yama couldn't care less about the pain and the monstrous anger in his heart. He took advantage of the momentum and rolled, miserably dodging the attack. Bang! The Azura blade slashed the floor, and a crack spread in all directions. A huge ravine appeared in the Yama Palace. Merely a single strike possessed such might, and it caused the hearts of the other kings of hell to tremble like cicadas in winter. They subconsciously switched places with the king of hell, and they couldn't help but notice with sorrow that they were probably unable to dodge that strike from before, and were directly slashed into two. This conclusion made them feel a deep sense of helplessness, but they still stared at the Asura with wide eyes, wanting to know more about him. King Yama fled in a sorry state like a stray dog. From left to right, from bottom to top, there was no place to hide in this huge palace, and there was no safe place to protect him. He was completely exposed to the Asura's pursuit. King Yama, now do you agree to return my shooting sun arrows to me? Tang Zheng calmly asked. No. King Yenluo gasped for breath and said. Tang Zheng didn't mind. He faintly smiled and said, Fine, I'm not in a hurry. However, if you die later, then don't blame me for not warning you. King Yama gnashed his teeth in hatred, but he couldn't do anything about Tang Zheng's words. He really couldn't understand why the Asura would listen to the words of a human. However, he didn't know that if he hadn't attacked the Asura earlier, the Asura's attention would have been attracted by others and he wouldn't have been chasing after him like this. King Yama almost died under the Asura's blade several times. Although he was lucky enough to survive, there were many more wounds on his body. It was a ghastly sight. The hearts of the other kings of hell trembled as they saw this. They directly listed Tang Zheng as one of the most dangerous people. Later on, if Tang Zheng had any requests, as long as it didn't endanger their lives, they shouldn't act recklessly. Otherwise, the King Yama's fate would be a lesson for them. Tang Zheng didn't know that his unintentional action had such an effect. He stared at King Yama without blinking. Suddenly, the blade flashed and one of King Yama's legs flew up. The Asura's attack was fast, accurate, and directly removed the leg. King Yama immediately staggered and fell to the ground, unable to escape the Asura's attack. Whoosh! The Asura's blade came crashing down, as if it wanted to chop off King Yama's head. King Yama screamed in fright. Facing death, he finally couldn't maintain his calm and dignity. His reaction was similar to that of an ordinary person. Suddenly, the sound of chanting scriptures rang in his ears. The Asura's blade actually stopped above his head, as if his head wouldn't be saved if it went any lower. King Yama raised his head in shock. He looked at the Asura's blade that was inches away from him, and then looked at the Asura's face that gradually turned from malevolent to calm. A storm rose in his heart. Even in his dreams, he couldn't figure out what was going on. Chapter 983. The other kings of hell were also shocked by this unforeseen event. They all stared at Tang Zheng with their eyes wide open. A human being was actually able to control such a terrifying existence like the Asura. This was truly a fantasy, but the scene in front of them was so real that they couldn't deny it. Immediately, their gazes towards Tang Zheng became very complicated. The raging waves in their hearts couldn't be calmed down for a long time. After Tang Zheng finished reciting the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the Asura completely quieted down. With a wave of Tang Zheng's hand, the Asura disappeared without a trace. Then, he walked in front of King Yenluo, looked down at him and said, Are you going to make a meaningless resistance? King Yenluo shook his head like a stray dog. Give me back my sun's shooting arrows. Tang Zheng shouted. King Yenluo completely lost his temper. He submissively handed over the sun's shooting arrows with both hands. Looking at the last sun's shooting arrow, Tang Zheng's gaze became excited. He took the sun's shooting arrow and with a thought, stored it in Sumeru world. Finally, the corner of his mouth revealed a smile. He looked at King Yenluo in ridicule and said, If you had handed it over earlier, wouldn't it have been better? Why did you have to cause so much trouble? King Yenluo was so angry that he almost vomited blood, but he didn't dare to say anything. He lowered his head deeply. This time, he really lost face. He lost an arm and a leg. His strength would definitely be greatly reduced. Even if he didn't die, what awaited him in the future wouldn't be a bright future. The other kings of hell looked at Tang Zheng with burning eyes, guessing what he would do next. Unexpectedly, Tang Zheng took a step back and didn't continue to be aggressive. Ha! Everyone was incomparably surprised. They didn't expect him to actually retreat. Dizong of Goguryeo said, King Yenluo, now that you are seriously injured, if you persist in going about things the wrong way, I'm afraid the consequences will be even more serious. King Yenluo had already completely lost his fighting spirit. He understood that the ghost realm was probably going to change. He weakly said, "Dizong of Goguryeo, whatever you say, it will be so." Dizong of Goguryeo slightly nodded. "All right, then I announce that the battle between the human world and the ghost realm will end here." From then on, the two realms were at peace. As for the matter of the Tree of Life absorbing the source energy of the ghost realm, this is something that the ghost realm did to the humans many years ago. Now, it is the cycle of cause and effect, so you don't have to worry too much about it. The human world will return to the big world, and our ghost realm will not perish because of becoming a small world. This is the promise that I, Dizong of Goguryeo, give to everyone. None of the other Yama kings were convinced by Qin Ye's decisiveness, but there was nothing they could do to refute him. Song Jiangwang was the first to agree. Dizong of Goguryeo is right. I support him unconditionally. King Yama looked at Song Jiangwang with disdain. The other kings of hell also nodded in agreement, and the King Yenluo could only dejectedly agree. Looking at this scene, Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. This was already an excellent result. He didn't dare to ask for more. He looked at Dizong of Goguryeo gratefully. Dizong of Goguryeo nodded at him without batting an eyelid and said, "Tang Zheng, are you satisfied with this result?" Dizong of Goguryeo actually asked for Tang Zheng's opinion. This made the other kings of hell's expressions become even more interesting. Tang Zheng's weight subconsciously increased in their hearts. "Everything will be as Dizong of Goguryeo says," Tang Zheng said respectfully. Dizong of Goguryeo nodded in approval. "Since that is the case, then everything is settled." Even so, the hearts of the other Yama kings did not relax. This was especially so for the Yama king. He looked at the Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva with a pitiful expression. As long as the Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva gave the word, his life and death would be decided. Tang Zheng, King Yenluo committed a crime in the past, but now his arms and legs are all damaged. How do you think we should deal with him? Dizong of Goguryeo asked. Tang Zheng was stunned. He didn't expect the Dizong of Goguryeo to ask him how to deal with King Yenluo. He looked deeply at King Yenluo and fell into deep thought. The other kings of hell's hearts were in suspense. They all guessed that King Yenluo wouldn't be able to escape death. Even King Yenluo himself turned pale and trembled. After a long time, Tang Zheng said, "Humans are not saints. How can they not make mistakes? King Yenluo is the same. I think he should have a chance to turn over a new leaf." These words were like coming back from the jaws of death. The haze in King Yenluo's heart was swept away. He couldn't help but look at Tang Zheng with tears of gratitude. Although King Yenluo had a lot of grievances in his heart, at this moment, he was sincerely grateful to Tang Zheng. King Yenluo was very clear about the other kings of hell's thoughts. The kings of hell were always fighting openly and secretly. They couldn't wait for their opponents to fall. King Yenluo was the first to bear the brunt and became the target of the others. In addition, he was seriously injured. It was difficult for him to maintain his position as the leader of the 10 kings of hell. Tang Zheng could have taken his life, but in the end, he let him go. This caused King Yenluo to have mixed feelings. In fact, Tang Zheng's thoughts were very simple. It was impossible to kill all the 10 kings of hell. Song Jiangwang had many tricks up his sleeve. If he killed King Yenluo, Song Jiangwang's strength would definitely increase. This was definitely not something that Tang Zheng wanted to see. By leaving King Yenluo, he could restrain Song Jiangwang. Moreover, if he left a rift in the ghost world would be too busy to fend for themselves. This way, even without the Dizong of Goguryeo, the human world would be much more peaceful. The others didn't know what he was thinking. They all raised their thumbs and praised Tang Zheng's kindness. Dizong of Goguryeo also nodded secretly. He deliberately threw this question to Tang Zheng with the intention of testing him. Tang Zheng's answer satisfied him. This was the kind of person who cultivated the Ksitagarbha Sutra. He was merciful. He didn't make the wrong choice. The other kings of hell felt that it was a pity, especially Song Jiangwang. Leaving a future threat like King Yenluo was definitely not a good thing for him. Why was this person so soft-hearted? He actually didn't kill King Yenluo directly? However, Song Jiangwang didn't dare to say these thoughts. He could only sigh secretly and secretly plan in his heart. King Yenluo's strength was bound to plummet. He should seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and sit on the throne of the 10 kings of hell. King Yenluo felt as if he had been pardoned. He said gratefully, "Thank you for not killing me. I was blinded by all the things in the past. I will definitely turn over a new leaf in the future." Tang Zheng nodded lightly. Since he had achieved his goal, he didn't want to stay any longer. He was afraid that his family would worry about his safety. "I'll send you off," Dizong of Goguryeo said. The other kings of hell also wanted to send him off. They wanted to build a good relationship with Tang Zheng. They also wanted to find out the true relationship between him and the Dizong of Goguryeo. There was no doubt that due to the existence of the Dizong of Goguryeo, Tang Zheng could almost do whatever he wanted in the ghost realm. No one dared to provoke him. The 10 kings of hell firmly remembered Tang Zheng's appearance. When they returned, they were bound to remind their subordinates that if they met this person in the future, they must be respectful and respectful. It was best to keep a respectful distance and not offend him in the slightest. On the city wall of Fengdu City, the cold wind whistled. Tang Zheng and the Dizong of Goguryeo stood on the city wall and looked down at the sticks below. The kings of hell stood in the distance. They wanted to hear the conversation between the two, but they couldn't hear a single word. Looking at the sticks below, Tang Zheng subconsciously thought of the time when he fell down and almost lost his life here. He couldn't help but sigh. The Styx River is a fierce river for both ghosts and humans. Fengdu City was built on the banks of the Styx River. King Yama really has absolute courage and boldness. Dizong of Goguryeo said to himself, not without appreciation. Tang Zheng nodded secretly and said, "Just now, I acted on my own initiative and let King Yama live. I wonder what advice Dizong of Goguryeo has for me?" Dizong of Goguryeo laughed loudly. "You did well. Everyone makes mistakes. This saying of the human world is also applicable to the ghost realm. Back then, King Yama did make a mistake, but he also contributed to the ghost realm all these years. Moreover, if King Yama dies, the ghost realm will be in chaos. This is not a scene I want to see." Dizong of Goguryeo had deep feelings for the ghost realm, so these words came from the bottom of his heart. Tang Zheng understood and secretly rejoiced at the wisdom of his choice. If he had stubbornly declared that King Yama was sentenced to death, then he would have offended Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Now that Dizong of Goguryeo was his most powerful helper in the ghost realm, he couldn't afford to offend him. Moreover, Dizong of Goguryeo had done him a favor. If it wasn't for Dizong of Goguryeo, his trip wouldn't have been so smooth. Even if he had painstakingly found out about the 10 Kings of Hell's plan for the Tree of Life, it was only treating the symptoms but not the root cause. Only by dealing with it could the Tree of Life avoid a catastrophe. Now that Dizong of Goguryeo had made the final decision and directly cut off the 10 Kings of Hell's improper thoughts for the Tree of Life, he didn't have to worry about the safety of the Tree of Life. He only had to wait until the human world was upgraded to a big world and stop the corresponding array. Then everything would be fine. In the future, the ghost realm will be more prosperous when you control it. Tang Zheng said sincerely. A world with an absolute powerhouse leading it could erupt with more power than the 10 Kings of Hell who were in a state of disunity. Dizong of Goguryeo didn't seem to be happy. Instead, he sighed and said, "The situation in the ghost realm is very complicated. It's not as simple as you think." Back then, when he promoted equality for all living beings, he was opposed by all the kings of hell. Although his cultivation was high, he didn't become a Buddha after all, so he was restrained everywhere. He also understood how difficult it was to promote his own ideas. Even though his cultivation had improved to a higher level and he had become a Buddha on the spot, he was not blindly optimistic. The 10 Kings of Hell didn't seem to dare to oppose him, but when it really touched their fundamental interests, they would never resign themselves to it. However, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was not discouraged. He was very persistent in his beliefs. He turned his head and put away all the complicated thoughts. He said, "You don't have to worry about me. This is the path I chose. I will walk it with determination. I believe that one day, all living things in the ghost realm will be equal. It will be peaceful and peaceful. It will not be the foul world we are in now." Seeing his persistence, Tang Zheng nodded in admiration. "Then I look forward to the arrival of that day. I'll take my leave now. Welcome to the ghost realm when you have time. In this big ghost realm, I can only tell you a little heart to heart. In addition, you must recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra every day to suppress the Shura. You can't let him harm the human world," Dizong of Goguryeo reminded. Chapter 984. Tian Chanzi stood in front of the Tree of Life. Looking at the black vortex in the sky, he frowned and fell into deep thought. Now, he had once again activated the Universal 8 Wilderness Formation to protect the Tree of Life. Everything was back to normal. Tang Zheng, you brat. You must come back. We are all waiting for you. Moreover, you have so many romantic debts. If something really happens to you, those female friends of yours will cry their eyes out. Tian Chanzi had been waiting here for many days. Because he was too worried about Tang Zheng, every day felt like a year. He was not in the mood to cultivate. He stared at the black vortex in the sky and the Tree of Life in a daze. Ha! Suddenly, his eyes changed. He stood up subconsciously and stared straight at the sky. The black vortex seems to be changing. He opened his eyes wide and found that the color of the vortex was fading little by little. Finally, it disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Holy *T! What's going on? He exclaimed and almost jumped up. Suddenly he had an idea. Could it be that the boy worked? The black whirlpool had indeed disappeared, leaving behind only the blue sky with a gentle breeze. Tian Chanzi was anxious. Like an ant on a hot pot, he paced around and muttered to himself, I hope it worked. Is Tang Zheng okay? He was more worried about Tang Zheng's safety. After all, even he, who was in the apotheosis realm, did not dare to enter the ghost realm. The danger of Tang Zheng's trip could be imagined. He couldn't wait to go to the ghost realm to find out. Whoosh! Suddenly, there was a huge change in the airflow not far away, and a pitch-black ghost gate suddenly appeared. Tian Chanzi was shocked and immediately overjoyed. He exclaimed, That boy must be back. He rushed over quickly and happened to see Tang Zheng swaggering out of the ghost gate. Tian Chanzi grabbed him, looked him up and down, and circled him. Seeing that he was really fine, he breathed a sigh of relief with lingering fear and said with emotion, You are really lucky, kid. You are not hurt at all. How did you do it? Looking at Tian Chanzi, Tang Zheng sincerely felt a sense of intimacy. He said with a smile, Of course it's because I'm strong enough. Stop bragging. Do you think I don't know what you are capable of? Hurry up and tell me what happened. Why did you make that black vortex disappear? Tian Chanzi urged impatiently. Tang Zheng looked up, and sure enough, he didn't see the black vortex. He smiled and asked, Have you been very worried about me these past few days? I'm not worried about you. It's the women in your family who are worried about you. Tian Chanzi was very worried, but he refused to admit it. Tang Zheng smiled and didn't point it out. He told him the whole story of the trip to the ghost realm. Tian Chanzi was stunned and couldn't close his mouth for a long time. He exclaimed, It turns out that there are so many secrets in the ghost realm, and you said that the Dizong of Goguryeo became a Buddha. His strength is too strong. It is said that he has reached the first stage of the Mahayana realm. The first stage of the Mahayana realm. Tian Chanzi's heart suddenly jumped. Even in the human world, there were many practitioners and strong people, but the masters of the Mahayana realm were absolutely rare. The Dizong of Goguryeo had such a powerful strength, which made Tian Chanzi feel powerless. You are really a lucky star. If it weren't for you, the Dizong of Goguryeo would have attacked the human world. Even if the Empyrean Fairy and I were there, I'm afraid we may not be the opponent of the Dizong of Goguryeo. Tang Zheng shook his head. The Dizong of Goguryeo is a pacifist. He won't attack the human world indiscriminately. Moreover, the other kings of hell were suppressed this time because of the Dizong of Goguryeo. Yes, if I am lucky enough to meet him, I must thank him in person. Tian Chanzi sighed. If there are no major events in the Yin and Yang realms, the Dizong of Goguryeo will definitely not set foot in the human world. The opportunity to meet is not easy. Tian Chanzi smiled bitterly. I just said it casually. Since the Tree of Life is no longer in danger and is protected by the array, let's go home together. I don't know how it is at home. Okay. Of course, Tian Chanzi did not want to stay here alone, so he left with the tang on his sword. However, they did not go straight to the capital. Instead, they went to the Li Palace first. The two descended from the sky and landed in the valley of the Li Palace. Whoosh! Whoosh! A series of figures rushed in from all directions. In the blink of an eye, the two were surrounded. At first, Li Xiaotian stayed in the Li Palace alone and tried to subdue the disciples of the Li Palace. Later, Granny Li escaped. In order to prevent her from sneaking back to the Li Palace, Tang Zhang sent Wu Junshan and a few others to help Li Xiaotian. He did not know how the situation was now. When he saw a group of Li Palace disciples surrounding him, Tang Zhang did not have time to make a move before someone in the crowd recognized him. "It's you." "Everyone calm down. It's not an enemy." Hearing this, the tense atmosphere immediately eased. Tang Zhang breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the thing he was most worried about did not happen. Li Xiaotian's methods were truly exceptional. He had probably already subdued the Li Palace. The crowd dispersed, and a person majestically walked over. Taking a closer look, it was actually Li Xiaotian. Compared to before, she had a more severe aura. The other disciples of the Li Palace all bowed to her respectfully. Seeing this scene, one could understand the prestige Li Xiaotian held in their hearts. When Li Xiaotian saw Tang Zhang, her cold face immediately blossomed into a smile. She quickened her steps and arrived in front of him. She could not help but grab his hand and say, "You've finally returned." Li Xiaotian had also heard about Tang Zhang's trip to the ghost realm. She did not approve of his risky actions. Now that she saw him standing in front of her safe and sound, a heartfelt joy spread out from within her. Tang Zhang was grabbed by her soft and jade-like hand. A strange feeling flashed through his heart. He could not help but be infected by her smile. He asked, "Are you well?" Li Xiaotian smiled sweetly. "I'm very well. What about you? Do I look like I'm not well? Let's go inside to talk." Li Xiaotian invited him. Then she turned around and ordered the others, "You can all disperse." "Yes, Holy Maiden." The others respectfully withdrew. Li Xiaotian personally led Tang Zhang and Tian Chanzi into the highest room. This room was some distance away from the other buildings. Its layout was completely different. Just by looking at it from the outside, one could feel an extraordinary aura. After entering, Tang Zhang was attracted by the elegant furnishings. However, this room did not seem to be for a woman to live in. On the contrary, it seemed very masculine. There were no men in the Li Palace, which made Tang Zhang rather surprised. Whose room is this?" Tang Zhang curiously asked. Li Xiaotian beamed and said, "I specially prepared this room for you. It's the best room in the Li Palace." "Prepared for me?" Tang Zhang pointed at his nose, incomparably flabbergasted. Li Xiaotian nodded. "Now that you are the new master of the Li Palace, this room can serve as a foil to your status." "The new master of the Li Palace?" Tang Zhang was confused. He suddenly remembered that he did not see Wu Junshan and the others. He hurriedly asked, "Just what is going on? Where are Wu and the others?" "They just left yesterday and returned to the capital. As for why you are the master of the Li Palace, haha, this is what I promised before. I will help you subdue the Li Palace." Li Xiaotian was like a child asking for credit. Her words were filled with joy. Tang Zhang was flabbergasted. He asked, "How did you do it in such a short amount of time?" Li Xiaotian proudly raised her neck and said, "How did I do it? You don't need to ask. In any case, the entire Li Palace will respect you as the master. We have already firmly grasped the Li Palace in our hands." Tian Chanzi also felt that it was inconceivable. This woman was a spirit of 100 changes and was most adept at catching people off guard. This time, he also could not figure out how she did it. He could not help but look her up and down. He thought that Tang Zhang leaving her life was really a wise decision. Her martial arts could not be considered the highest, but her ability was absolutely unparalleled. Even Mu Hongyan, this kind of outstanding business talent, might not be able to compare to her. This subduing of the Li Palace was enough to prove that although she had lost her memory, she did not lose her ability. Many things must have happened in this period of time. Tang Zheng's heart moved. He understood that the matter was definitely not as simple as she downplayed it. Seeing Tang Zheng looking at her with a burning gaze, Li Xiaotian muttered, "Something did happen. Granny Li came back. I almost died under her hands, but Wu and the others rushed back in time. In the end, Granny Li fled in a sorry state." When Li Xiaotian mentioned Granny Li, there was not the slightest fluctuation in her emotions. It was as if she was talking about a stranger, which made Tang Zheng feel a little strange. However, he also rejoiced. Fortunately, he had arranged for people to help Li Xiaotian. Otherwise, she would not have the chance to stand in front of him alive. Then, did the disciples of the Li Palace not react? Tang Jing asked. Of course there was. Ying Yu led a group of people in an attempt to counterattack. After failing, she led a few disciples of the Li Palace and escaped with Granny Li. However, I can guarantee that the remaining disciples of the Li Palace will wholeheartedly submit to you. Li Xiaotian said confidently. Ying Yu resisted. Then at that time, weren't you in danger? Li Xiaotian shook her head. I had already made preparations. Because, sooner or later, she would have rebelled against me. It's just that it was a little early, so she wouldn't be able to stir up any big waves. Are you always this confident? Am I? Li Xiaotian smiled sweetly. You didn't realize it yourself? Perhaps. First, take a look and see if you are satisfied with this room. If you are not satisfied, I will have people redecorate it. I am not that particular. Moreover, I am not a permanent resident of the Li Palace. Although you are not a permanent resident, you are still the master of the Li Palace. You must follow the rules. Li Xiaotian insisted. Seeing her insist that he was the new master of the Li Palace, Tang Zhang did not back down. The position of the Li Palace was very important. If he held it in his hands, it would be a great help. All right, I will do as you say. That night, Tang Zhang stayed in the room. In the dead of night, there was a knock on the door. Who? It's me. Opening the door, he saw Li Xiaotian standing gracefully outside. The night wind blew her skirt, revealing two slender jade legs. Under the illumination of the light, they were very eye-catching. It's so late. What's the matter? Tang Zhang asked curiously. Actually, I have another matter to report to you. Why didn't you say it during the day? This is a matter of the Li Palace. It's best if other people do not know. She was clearly guarding against Tian Chanzi. Chapter 985. In the dead of night, a single man and woman were in the same room. The lamplight shone on Li Xiaotian's face, adding a hint of haziness and gentleness to it. Li Xiaotian had cultivated the art of seduction since she was a child, so she normally presented herself as a fierce person. Now that she was in front of Tang Zhang, she completely shed her fierce exterior and revealed a feminine charm that complemented her seduction technique. Naturally, her charm soared. However, Tang Zheng's interest was piqued by her words, so he didn't pay too much attention to her appearance. When I was organizing the Li Palace's intelligence network, I discovered that the disciples of the Li Palace are scattered all over the world. In particular, there are many disciples of the Li Palace in the families of high officials and nobles in the capital. The majority of the Li Palace's intelligence is gathered by them, Li Xiaotian solemnly said. Oh! Tang Zheng's eyes brightened. He had previously had this question in his mind. The Li Palace was known for its intelligence network, so where did their intelligence come from? Moreover, the Li Palace was filled with female disciples, so Tang Zhang couldn't figure it out no matter how much he thought about it. Seeing that Li Xiaotian had taken the initiative to mention this matter, he hurriedly asked, What exactly is the situation? Many of these disciples of the Li Palace are wives and lovers of high officials and nobles. The Li Palace's intelligence network is gathered from them. But this isn't the key point. It turns out that the Li Palace's connections are the key. These past few years, Granny Li has only allowed these disciples to gather intelligence. I believe this is a reckless waste of God's gifts. Li Xiaotian bluntly criticized. Reckless waste of God's gifts? Tang Zhang was slightly astonished. He didn't expect Li Xiaotian to so directly criticize Granny Li. Yes, these disciples are a huge resource that can play an even more important role. They can even influence the decisions of the upper echelons of the government. I heard that your relationship with the government isn't very good. We can definitely start from here and slowly eliminate the enmity the government has for you. Pillow talk is very powerful. Li Xiaotian said and couldn't help but laugh. Pillow talk. Tang Zheng shivered. Li Xiaotian was really amazing. He actually thought of this idea. If he could really whisper pillow talk into the ears of those high officials and nobles, the pressure he faced from the government would be much less. Ever since the incident in the imperial city, the chief's attitude towards him was very intriguing. He had to consider the influence of this. Although he was strong enough, he didn't want to be surrounded and intercepted by the government and be judged as an enemy. What do you think of my idea? Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, Li Xiaotian asked as if he wanted to take credit. Tang Zheng gave him a thumbs up and praised from the bottom of his heart, "You're so smart." Thank you for the compliment. Li Xiaotian was immensely pleased with himself. He pursed his lips and smiled brilliantly. But Tang Zheng suddenly changed the topic. Water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it. These people might not listen to us, right? There must be some of Granny Li's confidants among them. If these people also spread pillow talk against us, wouldn't that be very disadvantageous for us? Li Xiaotian smiled faintly. Don't worry, I already expected this situation. I have a way to deal with these disobedient people. Seeing him so confident, Tang Zheng didn't ask any more questions. However, thinking of how she risked her life to save a child she didn't know, she certainly wouldn't do anything too excessive. I did so well, are you going to reward me? Li Xiaotian stared at Tang Zheng with his sparkling eyes and asked mischievously. Looking at her beautiful face so close, smelling the faint fragrance of a woman, especially the witty charm that was inadvertently revealed between her eyebrows, Tang Zheng's head swayed. He quickly stabilized his mind and said, "What kind of reward do you want?" "I haven't thought about it yet. I'll tell you when I think about it," Li Xiaotian said. "Okay." Tang Zheng readily agreed. This time, Li Xiaotian really did a big thing for him. If she had any requests, he would do his best to satisfy them. "That's right. Will you be in any danger if you stay here? After all, Granny Li is still free and unfettered outside." "Are you worried about me?" Li Xiaotian asked back. "Sort of. Yes means yes, no means no." "What do you mean sort of?" "Yes. I'm very happy. Don't worry, I will take good care of myself. Even if Granny Li makes a comeback, I still have a way to escape. Moreover, it wasn't easy for us to subdue the Li Palace. We can't just leave it like this." Li Xiaotian methodically analyzed. Her words were very reasonable, so Tang Zheng didn't try to persuade her anymore. He just reminded her to pay attention to her own safety, and then told her that he and Tian Chanzi would leave tomorrow. "So soon? The scenery here is pretty good. Why don't you stay for a few more days?" Li Xiaotian's expression darkened. "There are still too many things in the capital. If I don't get rid of the Lord, my heart will never be at ease. In addition, the 100 Faces Star Lord will definitely not let this matter go. There are undercurrents surging. I don't dare to be careless," Tang Zheng said in a low voice. Li Xiaotian thought for a while, then nodded. "A man's ambition is to travel far. You have the qualifications, so you should establish a foundation. In short, you don't have to worry about the Li Palace. I will do my best to manage it. It will definitely not be inferior to the previous Li Palace." Li Xiaotian didn't stay for long. After chatting for a while, she took the initiative to leave. Standing in the darkness, her eyes were especially bright. Staring at Tang Zheng's room, the corner of her mouth hooked up in a faint smile. The next day, Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi left the Li Palace early in the morning. They flew on their swords and went straight to the capital. Since Tang Zheng's strength had greatly increased, flying on his sword consumed less and less true qi. Therefore, even if it was a long journey, it didn't affect him much. Since he had such a convenient means of transportation, why would he need to take a plane or a train? Suddenly, whoosh! The roar of a fighter jet came from the sky. 2 fighter jets flew out from the clouds. The 2 of them jumped in fright and hurriedly hid in a white cloud. Only then did they realize that the sky was not safe. They couldn't underestimate the military's air defense. "Chongjiang, I'm Huang He. Did you see 2 people just now?" One of the fighter jet pilots asked his comrade. "Huang He, you must be seeing things. How can there be people in the sky? Maybe it's an eagle." The comrade laughed and joked. "It shouldn't be. My eyesight has always been very good." This small episode didn't affect Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi. It just made them more cautious. They landed safely in the suburbs of the capital. They didn't dare to fly on their swords without restraint in the capital. Not to mention that the capital was full of tall buildings and many eyes, the most important thing was that the air defense was many times stronger. If they didn't pay attention, they would be treated as invaders and shot down. Once they arrived in the capital, the two of them went their separate ways. Tian Chanzi didn't want to go back to Tang Zheng's home. Tang Zheng walked through the streets and alleys. Suddenly, he stopped and came to a familiar yet strange place, the Go Club. Ji Wuxiang's Go Club was quiet in this bustling city. Its artistic conception was elegant, like a paradise. Ji Wuxiang is a mysterious person, especially those people in his Go Club. They look ordinary and have no skills at all, but they give off an extraordinary feeling. If there's a chance, I must go to this Go Club to investigate. In the capital, other than the officials, the only person who could attract Tang Zheng's attention or interest was probably this mysterious Ji Wuxiang. As for Yi Xuanji and the other experts, Tang Zheng didn't put them in his eyes at all. Not long after, he finally arrived at his door. Before he could get close to the door, a few figures jumped out. Lord Envoy, you're back. So these people were the witch clan who were secretly protecting the villa. The witch clan loved and respected Tang Zheng from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, seeing him was even more exciting than seeing a great beauty. Looking at the energetic young men, Tang Zheng patted their shoulders and said, "Thank you for your hard work." They shook their heads like rattles and said excitedly, "It's not hard at all. It's our honor to serve you, Lord Envoy." Creak. The door opened and a beautiful figure flew out. It was actually Linger. Linger was like a dancing fairy. With a tap of her toes, she jumped into Tang Zheng's embrace and called out sweetly, "Master, you're finally back. Linger's luck is really good. I just returned to the capital and I actually saw you. Linger missed you so much." After parting ways in the south of Yunnan, Linger was busy with work and had no time to return to the capital. The two of them only talked on the phone occasionally, and this girl was reluctant to hang up every time. "Wow, Linger, you've grown taller again." Tang Zheng patted Linger's head and laughed. Linger's head was buried in Tang Zheng's chest. Hearing this, she raised her head and looked at him with her crystal-clear eyes, asking, "Really?" Of course, it means that Linger has grown up. Linger's mental age did not match her appearance at all, but she was growing up little by little. Looking at her cute appearance, Tang Zheng really felt like he was looking at a younger sister. Linger has grown up. Linger grabbed Tang Zheng's hand and rubbed it on her white and tender face as she said happily, "Why are you back in the capital?" "Linger is going to hold a concert." "Concert?" Tang Zheng was shocked. He didn't know much about Linger's work. He didn't expect that she was qualified to hold a concert. "I don't understand either, but anyway, Linger is very happy to be able to sing." Tang Zheng nodded. Linger had always loved singing. In the beginning, it was because she liked singing that she entered the entertainment industry. Now it seemed that her development was getting better and better. He said, "Then when you hold a concert, I'll also be a listener, okay?" "Really?" Linger's eyes immediately became round, black and bright. Seeing Tang Zheng nod his head, she jumped up in joy. "That's great, Linger is really happy." Wu Junshan, Lan Yu and Wu also came out to welcome him. When the three of them saw Tang Zheng, they were extremely excited and almost ran over. Wu immediately threw himself into Tang Zheng's embrace and hugged him tightly, as if he was afraid that he would run away. He muttered to himself, "You're finally back, you're back." Tang Zheng also hugged her tightly, patted her back and said, "I promised you that I would definitely come back." Chapter 986. Marshall reluctantly left Tang Zheng's embrace, but she still held onto his hand tightly. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, she was unwilling to let go. Feeling her attachment, Tang Zheng felt a warm current flow through his heart. On the other side, Linger also tightly hugged one of his arms, as if he was hugging a woman on his left and right. The witch clan was not surprised. Instead, they felt that these women were truly honored to be able to obtain the emissary's affection. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at their son with excitement and relief. During this period of time, Lan Yu had become much more haggard. She thought about it day and night and was extremely worried. Tang Zheng nodded to the two of them. Lan Yu asked with concern, "I don't know how many dangers you've experienced on this trip. It's been hard on you." Tang Zheng smiled and shook his head, saying that it wasn't hard. "Let's not stand outside for now. Let's talk inside," Lan Yu said. The few of them entered the house and found that only the Empyrean Fairy and Fu Yao were there. Where are the others? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Those women of yours went to the island and haven't returned yet. Yi Ding Dang and are like stalkers all day, staring at each other. If one of them goes out, how can the other not follow? The Empyrean fairy said calmly. Tang Zheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Only the Empyrean fairy dared to speak so unscrupulously in front of him. I didn't expect your trip to the ghost realm to end so quickly. The Empyrean fairy sat up straight and looked at Tang Zheng with interest. Although the Empyrean fairy had never been to the ghost realm, she had heard a little about it. She did not think that it was some kind of paradise, but a place of true danger. The fact that Tang Zheng had returned so quickly was truly out of her expectations. With the help of a benefactor, everything went smoothly. What benefactor? Although the Empyrean fairy's cultivation was high, she had never been to the other world. Naturally, she was full of curiosity, and she couldn't hide her curiosity about the nobles. Wu Junshan, Lan Yu, and the others also widened their eyes and stared at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng briefly explained the trip to the ghost realm. When the few of them heard this, they sucked in a breath of cold air, especially Lan Yu and Wu. Their expressions were especially worried. Wu grabbed onto Tang Zheng's palm and broke out in cold sweat. It's so dangerous. Don't go to that damned place again, Marshall said with lingering fear. Lan Yu hurriedly agreed. That's right. The ghost realm is too dangerous. Don't ever go there again. After all, the 10 Yama Kings are not to be trifled with. If they plot against you, it'll be too late for regrets. Master is really amazing. Ling Er was innocent and didn't feel that it was too dangerous. Instead, she felt that her master was an unparalleled hero. The Empyrean fairy listened with great interest. Her eyes became brighter and brighter. She suddenly nodded and said, so the ghost realm not only has the 10 Yama Kings, there is also an even more powerful Dizong of Goguryeo. This is really surprising. Dizong of Goguryeo upholding justice and the two realms living in peace is definitely a good thing for us. For the time being, we don't have to worry about the ghost realm. After pausing for a moment, the Empyrean fairy changed the topic and said, however, the ghost realm still has the 10 Yama Kings. In the future, there will be some unforeseen events. Therefore we can't let our guard down. With the Dizong of Goguryeo presiding over the situation, there shouldn't be any unforeseen events, right? Tang Zheng felt that the Empyrean fairy was making a mountain out of a molehill. The Empyrean fairy smiled. In the past I saw too many people and too many things. The ghost realm is not much different from the human world. Everything is developing and changing. The Dizong of Goguryeo can preside over the situation now, but it doesn't mean that he can in the future. Therefore, we still have to be fully prepared. Wu Junshan, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. Fu Yao is right. Humans are the most fickle, and ghosts are no exception. It's still too early to discuss this. Tang Zheng didn't want to talk too much and changed the topic. You didn't tell anyone that I went to the ghost realm, right? According to your instructions, we didn't tell anyone. That's good. Tang Zheng breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want Yi Dingdang and the others to worry about him. Just as they were talking, the door was pushed open and An walked in angrily. She said indignantly, Yi Dingdang, don't go too far. Wherever I go you follow. Do you think I'm a spy? Yi Dingdong's clear voice came from outside the door. Who said I thought you were a spy? The main road is to the sky, and we'll go our separate ways. This isn't your country, this is my country. I'll go wherever I want to go. What can you do about it? And was about to retaliate when her eyes suddenly stared blankly. She screamed and jumped up like a rabbit, pouncing straight at Tang Zheng. Looking at the menacing end, Tang Zheng jumped up from the sofa and dodged to the side. And missed and fell on the sofa. Tang Zheng was really shocked by this scene. When he left, and followed him. Later, he let Yi Dingdang watch her so that they had a chance to leave. They just met and actually pounced on him. If he was really pushed down by her in front of so many people, then he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. Doubts arose in his heart. When did An become so fierce? It didn't seem like her style before. Although An dared to do things, she still had the blood of the royal family flowing in her body. She had the natural grace of the royal family. How did she become like a violent female leopard? However, he didn't know that Anne's life had undergone earth-shattering changes during this period of time. Ever since she openly announced that she liked Tang Zheng in front of so many people and wanted to pursue him, Yi Dingdang had listed her as the #1 enemy. That was why she gave up on the island trip and stayed behind to guard, and so that she wouldn't have a chance to take advantage of any loopholes. And couldn't beat Yi Dingdang in a fight. She was also no match for Yi Dingdang in a brutal way. Being watched every day almost drove Anne crazy, but there was nothing she could do. If looks could kill, Yi Dingdang would have been riddled with holes and died countless times. Yi Dingdang knew that she couldn't do anything to Anne, so she took a step back and took this kind of non-violent action. While Tang Zheng wasn't around, it was best to annoy and then pack up and leave. This was the best outcome. But in the end, what Yi Dingdang didn't expect was that although Anne was on the verge of exploding every time, in the end, she took a few deep breaths and actually endured it. A dignified princess actually endured such a huge grievance. If it weren't for her love rival, Yi Dingdang would have to admire her. Yi Dingdang couldn't do anything, but she became even more vigilant. Hearing Anne scream, Yi Dingdang also suddenly saw Tang Zheng on the sofa. Before she could react, she realized that Anne had actually rushed toward Tang Zheng. Yi Dingdang was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. 3 words appeared in her mind. Shameless. Seeing that and missed, Yi Dingdang finally laughed gloatingly. She slipped and also rushed in front of Tang Zheng. Like a swallow returning to the forest, she threw herself into his arms and winked at Anne as if to show off. When Anne saw that Yi Dingdang had caught up with her, she angrily glared at Tang Zheng as if blaming him for not understanding the situation and avoiding her. A fragrant scent entered his nose as a soft body fell into his arms. Tang Zheng subconsciously hugged Yi Dingdang, and her hands hooked around his neck. Ahem. Wu Junshan coughed dryly, as if reminding them that there were outsiders present. Tang Zheng's expression was resentful when he realized that everyone was looking at him strangely. Just now, he was hugging one woman on each side, and now there was another one. This kind of scene was not suitable for children. Stand properly. How old are you already? Still making such a fuss? Tang Zheng pretended to be serious as he reluctantly let go of the softness in his palm. Yi Dingdang smiled sweetly and acted coquettishly. You still dare to scold me? Humph, you have no conscience. To think that I was so worried about you. Tang Zheng resentfully said in a low voice. So many people are watching. Yi Dingdang bit her lip and glared at him. She said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, I'll deal with you tonight. Tang Zheng's head shook. When he was in the ghost realm, his pure yang energy had exploded. If it weren't for luck, he would have exploded and died. Hearing Yi Dingdang's provocative words, his thoughts couldn't help but stir. His pure yang energy seemed to be restless again. Tang Zheng, you've been gone for so long. I miss you very much too. Seeing the two separated, Anne took the initiative to walk over. She stretched out her arms as if she wanted Tang Zheng to give her a big hug. Looking at Yi Dingdang's eyes that were about to spit fire, Tang Zheng didn't dare to enjoy this beauty's kindness. He acted as if he didn't see it and politely said, Thank you for Anne's concern. I'm too tired from the journey. I'll go back to my room to rest. You can continue chatting. The atmosphere in the living room was so strange that Tang Zheng didn't want to stay and attract the fire. He quickly slipped away and returned to his room. Yi Dingdang was like a general who had won a battle. She proudly glanced at and as if to say that compared to her, she was still too young. And angrily stomped her foot and gritted her teeth. She refused to admit defeat and said, Let's wait and see. She walked back to her room in her high heels. Her room was next to Tang Zheng's. It was her act of moving her room that provoked the other women. They hated her blatant act of poaching, but because she was too open and honorable, and also had the status of a princess, the others couldn't do anything about it. Wu Junshan looked at this scene worriedly. He exchanged glances with his wife. The two tacitly walked to the side and whispered to each other. Tang Zheng's charm to attract girls is too great. This house is like a war all day long. It's not a good thing. As his mother, shouldn't you remind him? Wu Junshan said worriedly. How can I say something like this? Shouldn't you be the one saying it as his father? Lan Yu rolled her eyes. Although this is a bit inappropriate, at least it proves that our son is very charming. You old man naturally can't compare to him. Wu Junshan bitterly smiled. How can I compare to him? I'm just worried that there will be a fire in the backyard. After all, women can be very scary when they go crazy. Lan Yu glared at him and asked, "Are you saying that I'm very scary? When was I talking about you? Am I not a woman? I'm talking about other women?" But you're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.